Chapter 273. Emote song. Isn't it inappropriate for you to say that? Luiyue is now competing on behalf of your academy. Do you want your academy to lose if you say that she's putting on an act? Elder Feng Yi replied indifferently. Emote song was exasperated. Elder Feng Yi retracted his gaze and looked at the elixir in the jade box. 4 lines were clearly visible. However, the 4th line was the same as Leng Chuan's. It was a little faint. Elder Feng Yi pondered for a moment. 4th grade lower. Ji Zixing's expression was very calm. He naturally knew the grade of the elixir. He refined himself. Cheng Lixue, who was next to him, hurriedly took the elixir and looked at it carefully. He frowned and said reluctantly, 4th grade lower. Emote Song only glanced at it symbolically. He didn't say much and gave the same judgment. Elder Feng Yi nodded at Ji Zixing. It's the first time you've seen the formula. It's not bad to be able to successfully refine it. You seem to have made progress recently. Ji Zixing cupped his hands respectfully. You flatter me, Elder. I still have many shortcomings. He had always felt that he wasn't smart enough. Out of all the people present who had received the superior prescription, he was probably the slowest. He had spent a full hour studying the prescription, and he was also the last to attempt to form the pill. Even Chu Luiyue, who came on halfway, caught up and was faster than him. Although he succeeded, he still seemed a little clumsy compared to the others. You have your merits. You don't have to be so modest. Seeing that Ji Zixing didn't become arrogant because of the success of this competition, Elder Feng Yi was very satisfied. 4 heavenly doctors. Temperament was also an extremely important part of their talent. Go and rest first. You'll be fine after Luiyue is done. Yes. Chu Luiyue was the only one left in the arena. Everyone's eyes were focused on her. Anticipation, doubt, sarcasm. Chu Luiyue ignored them and remained patient. In order to conserve origin force, she controlled the flames in the medicine cauldron to reduce a little and gathered the rest in one place. In this way she could hold on for a longer time. However, as time passed, the others gradually became anxious and suspicious. Why hasn't Chu Luiyue finished yet? Previously she said she was fast. Now that Ji Zixing has already finished for quite a while, there's still no progress on that medicinal pill of hers. Could it be that there's some problem? I think it's most likely going to fail. Think about it, Leng Chuan and Ji Zixing who successfully refined medicinal pills, which one of them is like her, taking so long to form the pill? I think so too. In the end, her standard is still not enough. Even if she's old man Ye's disciple, she doesn't seem to have cultivated for too long, right? Everyone from Sky Foothill Academy felt very complicated. On one hand, Ji Zixing forming the pill, at least he had the strength to compete, which was worth being happy about. But on the other hand, Chu Luiyue's failure to succeed after so long also made them somewhat worried. Situ Xingqian stood at the side of the arena. Every second really felt like a year. Looking at Chu Luiyue standing in her position to refine medicine, she had an indescribable awkwardness in her heart. Previously, she was filled with anger, only feeling that Chu Luiyue blocked her path to winning first place. Under impulse, she even agreed to let Chu Luiyue replace her to participate in the competition. But after she gradually calmed down, she realized that doing so did not seem to have any benefits for her. Seeing that Chu Luiyue still did not move, she finally took a step forward. Chu Luiyue, I've thought about it for a long time and still feel that it's not suitable for you to replace me in the competition. Her voice was gentle and sweet, her tone extremely sincere. Her slightly furrowed brows were even more pitiful. I believe that you definitely did not deliberately interrupt me forming the pill previously. So if I continue to bicker with you like this, it's also unfair to you. Don't worry, even if you can't refine the pill, I won't blame you. Boom. In the medicine cauldron in front of Chu Luiyue, flames suddenly rose. At the same time, a powerful wave of energy crashed heavily onto the medicine cauldron. Boom. An indescribably rich medicinal fragrance spread out. Chu Luiyue stretched out her wrist and the pill automatically fell into her hand. Whoosh. She quickly placed the elixir into the jade box at the side. Her actions were as smooth as flowing water. It was only when Chu Luiyue closed the lid of the jade box with a clack that everyone realized what had happened. Chu Luiyue had actually succeeded. Situ Xingqian was stunned on the spot. All the blood in his body seemed to have frozen and he was completely stunned. Only then did Chu Luiyue look at her. What did you say just now? Situ Xingqian opened her mouth, but she couldn't spit out a single word. She was still in the midst of a huge shock and couldn't recover from it. Chu Luiyue tilted her head and asked again. The corners of Situ Xingqian's mouth twitched. She wanted to use her usual smile to cover up her current embarrassment, but she found that her face seemed to be wearing a thick mask. She couldn't move at all, and even the corners of her mouth became incomparably heavy. Chu Luiyue had actually succeeded. How could she smile like this? And nothing. Situ Xingqian was extremely vexed. Why did she say those words just now? Now it seemed that she was extremely stupid. Chu Luiyue shrugged her shoulders and raised the corners of her lips nonchalantly. She didn't continue to pursue the matter and walked towards Elder Feng Yi and the other two elders. She stood in front of the three of them and handed over the jade box in her hand. "I'm sorry to have made you wait for so long, seniors," Chu Luiyue said very politely. Elder Feng Yi laughed heartily. "Not long, not long. Originally, there was no rigid time limit for the Heaven Doctors competition. Furthermore, you've successfully refined the elixir." As he spoke, he nervously and curiously opened the jade box. An elixir appeared in front of him. The moment he saw the elixir, Elder Feng Yi's eyes widened abruptly. This? He almost couldn't wait to pick up the elixir and study it carefully. It took him a while to suppress the excitement in his heart. This is the 4th grade, medium? What? Cheng Lixue and Emote Song, who were at the side, were originally very unhappy, so they had been sitting in their chairs and didn't take a closer look. Hearing Elder Feng Yi's words, the two of them spoke in unison. "Feng Yi, don't tell me you're deliberately overestimating her just because she's a student of your academy?" Emote Song blurted out. Elder Feng Yi waved his hand. "Take a look for yourself. Won't you know?" Emote Song took the elixir suspiciously, then his expression changed. Cheng Lixue sensed that something was wrong and came over. On the surface of the elixir there were 4 lines. But the most important thing was that the 4th line was obviously clearer than Lung Chuan's and Ji Zixing's. This was indeed the 4th grade. Elder Feng Yi laughed. "Now you won't object, right?" The two of them fell silent. Elder Feng Yi raised his voice, his eyes shining with pride. "Luiyue, congratulations. The final evaluation of this elixir, 4th grade, medium. This is the highest grade elixir that has appeared in today's competition. It is undoubtedly the first." Chu Luiyue looked at Situ Xingqian with a smile. "Congratulations, Princess Situ Xingqian. Digression, let's have a meal. The 5th grade is estimated to be a little late. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website." Chapter 274. Emote Song, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to say that? Luyu is competing for your academy now. You say she's just putting on an act. Do you want your academy to lose? Elder Feng Yi replied indifferently. Emote Song was furious. Elder Feng Yi had already retracted his gaze and looked at the pill in the jade box. The 4 lines were clearly visible. However, the 4th line was the same as Lung Chuan's. It was a little faint. Elder Feng Yi thought for a moment. 4th grade lower. Ji Zixing's expression was very calm. He naturally knew what grade the medicinal pills that he refined himself were. Cheng Lixue, who was next to him, quickly took the pill and looked carefully. He frowned and said reluctantly, 4th grade lower. Emote Song only glanced at it symbolically. He didn't say much and gave the same judgment. Elder Feng Yi nodded at Ji Zixing. "It's your first time seeing the prescription. You're very good to be able to successfully refine it. You seem to have improved recently." Ji Zixing cupped his hands respectfully. "Elder, you flatter me. I still have many shortcomings." In fact, he always felt that he wasn't smart enough. Out of all the people present who had taken the advanced prescription, he was probably the slowest. He had spent a full hour studying the prescription, and he was also the last to attempt to form the pill. Even Chu Luiyue, who went up halfway, caught up with him and was faster than him. Although he succeeded in refining the pill, he was still clumsy compared to the others. You have your own merits. You don't have to be too modest. Seeing that Ji Zixing didn't become arrogant because of his success in this competition, Elder Feng Yi was very satisfied. For a celestial physician, temperament was also an extremely important part of talent. Go and rest first. You can wait for Luyu to finish. Yes. Only Chu Luiyue was left in the arena. All eyes were focused on her. Anticipation, suspicion, and sarcasm. Chu Luiyue ignored them and was still very patient. However, in order to save force, she reduced the flame in the medicine cauldron and gathered the rest in one place. This way she would be able to last longer. However, as time passed, the others gradually became anxious and suspicious. Why isn't Chu Luiyue over yet? Previously I said that she was fast, but now Ji Zixing has already completed it for a long time, and she still hasn't made any progress with her pill. Could there be a problem? I think it's most likely going to fail. Think about it. Among Lung Chuan and Ji Zixing who successfully concocted medicinal pills, which one of them took as long as her? I think so too. In the end, her level is still not high enough. Even if she is old Ye's disciple, it doesn't seem like she has been cultivating for too long, right? Everyone from Tianlu Academy had mixed feelings. On one hand, Ji Zixing's success meant that he had at least a fighting chance. This was something to be happy about. On the other hand, Chu Liuyue's lack of success also worried them. Situ Xingqian stood by the side of the competition venue, and every second felt like a year. When she saw Chu Liyue standing in her spot and concocting the pill, she felt inexplicably awkward. Previously, she was filled with anger as she felt that Chu Liyue was blocking her path to first place. In a moment of impulse, she even agreed to let Chu Liyue replace her in the competition. However, when she gradually calmed down, she realized that doing so did not seem to benefit her at all. Seeing that Chu Liyue still did not move, she finally stepped forward. Chu Liyue, I've thought about it for a long time, but I still feel that it's not appropriate for you to replace me in the competition. Her voice was gentle and sweet, and her tone was extremely sincere. Her slightly furrowed brows made her look even more pitiful. I believe that you didn't purposely interrupt my pill concoction, so it's unfair to you if I continue to be so calculative with you. Don't worry. Even if you can't concoct the pill, I won't blame you. Boom. Flames suddenly rose from the medicine cauldron in front of Chu Liyue. At the same time, a strong wave hit the medicine cauldron. Boom. An indescribable dense medicinal fragrance spread throughout the air. Chu Liyue stretched out her wrist, and the pill automatically landed in her hand. She quickly placed the pill into the jade box at the side. Her series of actions were smooth, and the crowd only realized what had happened when Chu Liyue closed the jade box with a thud. Chu Liyue actually succeeded. Situ Xingqian was dazed. All the blood in her body seemed to have frozen and she was dazed. Chu Liyue then looked at her. What did you just say? Situ Xingqian opened her mouth, but she could not spit out the rest of her words. She was still in a state of shock and could not recover her senses. Oh? Chu Liyue tilted her head and asked again. Situ Xingqian's lips moved. She wanted to use her usual smile to hide her awkwardness and embarrassment, but she realized that it was as if she was wearing a thick mask. She could not move at all, and even the corners of her lips became extremely heavy. Chu Liyue actually succeeded. How could she laugh at this? Nothing. Situ Xingqian was frustrated. Why did I say all those things just now? Now it seems like I'm really stupid. Chu Liyue shrugged and nonchalantly curved her lips. She didn't continue asking as she walked toward Elder Feng Yi and the other two. She stood in front of the three of them and handed over the jade box in her hands. I'm sorry to have made you wait. Chu Liyue said very politely. Elder Feng Yi laughed out loud. Not long. Originally, the Celestial Physician competition did not have a fixed time limit. Besides, you even successfully produced a pill. As he spoke, he nervously and curiously opened the jade box. A pill appeared in front of him. The moment he saw this pill, Elder Feng Yi suddenly widened his eyes. This? He almost couldn't wait to pick up the pill and carefully examine it. He only suppressed the agitation in his heart after a while. This is a 4th grade, medium. What? Cheng Lixue and Emote Song, who were at the side, were originally very unhappy, so they sat in their chairs and did not look carefully. Upon hearing Elder Feng Yi's words, the two of them spoke in unison. Feng Yi, don't tell me you purposely overestimated her just because she's a student from your academy? Emote Song blurted out. Elder Feng Yi waved his hand. Take a look yourself. You'll know when you see it. Emote Song suspiciously took the pill and his expression changed. Cheng Lixue sensed that something was amiss and also leaned over. He saw that there were 4 lines on the pill. But the most important thing was that the 4th line was clearly clearer than Lung Chuan's and Ji Zixing's. This was indeed a 4th grade, medium. Elder Feng Yi laughed out loud. Now you won't object, right? The two of them were silent. Elder Feng Yi raised his voice, and his eyes glowed with pride. Liu, congratulations. This pill's final evaluation is a 4th grade, medium. This is the highest grade pill that appeared in today's competition. It's unquestionably first. Chu Liyue smiled and looked at Situ Xingqian. Eldest Princess Situ, congratulations. Digression. After a meal, the 5th update will probably be a little late. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 275. Congratulations. When Situ Xingqian heard this, it was as if she had been slapped harshly. Even if Chu Luiyue replaced me in the competition and let me get first place, everyone could clearly see that Chu Luiyue was the one who refined the fourth grade pill. Everyone had personally witnessed Chu Luiyue's extraordinary talent and shocking abilities. At this point, Situ Xingqian finally realized something. The higher the grade of the pill Chu Luiyue refined and the better the ranking, the greater the humiliation he brought to me. After the Qingjiao competition, everyone would know that I, Situ Xingqian, could only get first place in the celestial physician competition because Chu Luiyue was outstanding enough. By then, everyone's focus would be on Chu Luiyue. Who would care about me? All the fame and glory would belong to Chu Luiyue in the end. What am I? I'm just a pitiful and lamentable accessory. Chu Luiyue gave me first place, but at the same time he gave me a huge humiliation. Situ Xingqian was so regretful that her intestines turned green. Her face was red and white, and she wanted to disappear from this place immediately. Elder Feng Yi surveyed the surroundings. I hereby announce that the first place in this year's Qingjiao competition for the Celestial Physician competition is Taiyan Academy's Situ Xingqian. When his low and powerful voice landed, the huge square fell into an eerie silence. Especially the people from Taiyan Academy, their expressions were indescribable. Eldest Princess Situ, you don't seem to be very happy. Chu Luiyue blinked and asked. I vaguely heard you say that you wanted to cancel the agreement between us. What? Is my compensation not enough? Situ Xingqian's body trembled slightly. You're asking the obvious. Chu Luiyue clearly did it on purpose. She clenched her teeth and forced a smile, but there was no smile in her eyes. And no. Chu Luiyue helped me get first place. How can I say that it's not enough? But she would rather not have this first place now. Elder Feng Yi cupped his hands towards Xuanhuan and chuckled. Dean Xuanhuan, congratulations. Xuanhuan felt like he was about to vomit blood. Before this, he had never thought that he would actually obtain first place in the warrior tournament in such a manner. But now, when he heard the word, congratulations, he felt that it would be better if he didn't have a ranking. In the end, Chu Luiyue was the one who took first place. For so many years, he had never encountered such an aggrieved and speechless matter. Sun Zhongyan looked at Ji Zixing and patted him on the shoulder. Zixing, you performed very well this time. Although you didn't help our academy get first place, but strength is respect, and you have to admit defeat. Am I right? Ji Zixing replied, Thank you, elder son, for your guidance. This student will remember it well. Xuanhuan clenched his fists. Sun Zhongyan was making oblique accusations. Every word was filled with mockery. However, he had no way to refute it. Zhuorong, Xianxia, and the others looked at each other with complicated expressions. After a while, Zhuorong could not help but hold his forehead and mutter to himself. I knew that this girl was indeed hiding her true abilities. Previously she probably acted so clumsy on purpose. To think that they thought that she was really not good at alchemy. Xianxia was even more embarrassed. At that time he was the one who looked down on Chu Luiyue the most. He did not expect that, after keeping silent for a while, he said, No wonder the dean was willing to accept her as a disciple. There was probably no other person with such talent in the entire country Yaoqian, right? Zhuorong quickly got over it and clapped his hands. Why are you thinking so much? That girl was hiding her abilities on purpose previously. Not only us but so many people also did not see through it, right? TSK, I heard that Luyu caused a lot of trouble for the Chu family. Now it seems like it was nothing. When the news of the Qingjiao competition spreads, TSK. Previously, when Chu Luiyue entered Tianlu Academy, the Chu family might have regretted it, but it was not to the extent of heartache. After all, the Chu family still had Chu Xianmin, who was considered one of the best in the academy. However, it was different now. In the Qingjiao competition, Chu Luiyue took first place in both the warrior and xianmaster categories. Strictly speaking, she was also first in the celestial physician category. Even in the entire history of country Yaoqian, such a genius had never appeared before. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know what Chu Luiyue's current talent meant. As long as there were no accidents, she would definitely be a top-notch warrior with a bright future. That would be a fatal blow to the Chu family. The 3 rounds of the Qingjiao competition had finally ended. Next, the prizes would be given out according to the rankings. Situ Xingqian did not remember how she accepted the so-called first place. Her entire body was numb and her mind was in a mess. In comparison, Chu Luiyue was not affected at all. The judges handed over 2 cosmic bags. Sun Zhongyan smiled. Luyu, these 2 cosmic bags are your prizes for winning first place in the warrior category and first place in the xianmaster category. The items are inside. You can check them yourself. Envious noises could be heard from the crowd. Just these 2 cosmic bags were precious enough, not to mention the other treasures inside. Chu Luiyue did a simple check and realized that there were some precious Xian formation diagrams, some high-leveled martial arts techniques, and even a mid-level fiend's core of essence. Her lips curled up into a bright smile. "Thank you, Elder Sunday." Elder Sun nodded in satisfaction when he saw her being neither servile nor overbearing. There were many good items in the cosmic bag. Chu Luiyue was actually so calm and magnanimous. She was giving face to the academy's director. Of course, the most important thing was her talent and abilities. Other than these, there's one more thing. You can choose any one of the 3 academies and borrow books for free for a month. I asked you a few days ago and you said that you needed to think about it. Do you have an answer now? Chu Luiyue nodded. Elder Sun, I've thought about it. I want to go to Taiyan Academy. Once she said that, everyone was shocked. Even though Taiyan Academy was also an option, it was obvious that Chu Luiyue had completely offended the entire academy. If she went, wouldn't she be causing trouble for herself? Even Xuanhuan couldn't help but ask. Are you sure? I'm sure. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change. She had to personally investigate Heng Jingchua and Yang Jianqing's matter. This was the best opportunity. What? Don't you welcome her, Director Xuanhuan? Xuanhuan sneered and slowly said, Why? Why would I? Taiyan Academy welcomes her. Chu Luiyue pretended not to hear the threat in his words and smiled. Thank you. Emperor Jianghu finally spoke. Lu Yu. Before he could finish his sentence, Eunuch Min suddenly walked over and anxiously said, Your Majesty. Emperor Jianghu said unhappily. Why are you so flustered? Eunuch Min hurriedly knelt down and presented a letter with both hands. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I do have something important to report. The Tianling dynasty's envoy is already 20 kilometers away from the imperial city. He'll arrive soon. Chu Luiyue's heart harshly trembled. She suddenly looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Yuan. Chapter 276. Emperor Jianghu was also shocked as he stood up abruptly. What? Didn't they say that it would take some time? Why are they here so suddenly? We aren't prepared yet. Eunuch Min wiped the sweat off his forehead and said fearfully. Your Majesty, I don't know either. What do you think we should do? What should we do? What else can we do? Emperor Jianghu hurriedly walked forward. Of course, I'll personally welcome them. Hearing Emperor Jianghu say this, the Empress hurriedly followed and signaled Rong Jin and Rong Qi with her eyes. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, the Crown Prince and I will go with you. Emperor Jianghu thought for a while and agreed. In such an occasion, it would be more solemn with more people. The Empress and the Crown Prince's identities were just right. His footsteps kept moving forward. His face, which had always been expressionless, was visibly nervous. Seeing Emperor Jianghu's reaction, the others naturally didn't dare to delay. Other than Rong Jin, the other princes and princesses immediately stood up and obediently followed. The elders from the 3 academies were also shocked, and their expressions were strange. However, most of the people in the square didn't know what kind of existence the Tianling dynasty was, so they were confused when they saw this scene. Tianling dynasty? What's that? Why haven't I heard of it before? Look at His Majesty's anxious look. I really don't know where the other party is from. Could their status be higher than His Majesty's? Gosh, I heard that there's an existence thousands of miles away that's countless times stronger than our country Yaochen. Could it be? Sure. This matter isn't something we can discuss. Be careful of what you say. Probably because of Emperor Jianghu and the rest's influence, the entire square's atmosphere became strange and tense. Sun Zhongyan thought for a moment. Bai Qin, immediately bring the students back. I'll go with His Majesty. Bai Qin and the rest immediately nodded. This matter concerned the Tianling dynasty, so even they couldn't help but be nervous. But at the same time they couldn't help but feel curious. One had to know that this was the first time the Tianling dynasty had sent people to country Yaochen in 100 years. If he had the chance to meet him, he might be able to obtain some kind of opportunity. Sun Zhongyan then looked at Fu Yunshan and Xuanhuan. As expected, he saw that their faces were also filled with shock. He couldn't care less and quickly said, Brother Yunshan, Brother Xuanhuan, this is an important matter. You should bring your students back first. If anything happens, I will immediately. People from the Tianling dynasty are coming? Xuanhuan couldn't help but walk up to Sun Zhongyan. He couldn't believe his ears. Why would a top empire that only existed in rumors send people to a small country like country Yaochen? Sun Zhongyan paused for a moment. They're not coming. They're already here. Not many people knew about this piece of news, and Emperor Jianghu clearly said that the news wasn't to be leaked before the people came. Therefore, xuanhuan and the others didn't know about this, so it was normal for them to react this way. Xuanhuan sucked in a breath of cold air and spent a lot of effort to calm himself down. However, eunuch Min's words kept flashing in his mind. The people of the Tianling dynasty were just 20 miles away from the imperial capital. "I'll go too," Xuanhuan blurted out. "What?" Sun Zhongyan knitted his brows. Xuanhuan shook his sleeves and said sternly, "I'm Emperor Jianghu. As the dean of Taiyan Academy, don't I have the right to meet you?" Sun Zhongyan was about to retort when Fu Yunshan spoke up. "Me too. It's fine if we're not here. After all, the esteemed guests are here to visit country Yaochen. But coincidentally we're here. Your Majesty, why can't you introduce us to them?" Xuanhuan suddenly became eloquent. This matter concerned the Tianling dynasty, so he naturally couldn't give up on this great opportunity. Seeing that Sun Zhongyan was about to reject him again, Xuanhuan decisively turned around and walked toward Emperor Jianghu. "Your Majesty, my Taiyan Academy, Director Xuanhuan and Director Fu Yunshan can come along." Emperor Jianghu quickly gave a reply as he kept walking forward. At the same time, he kept instructing his subordinates on what to do. He had heard Xuanhuan and Fu Yunshan's words clearly. Even if he didn't want anyone else to be involved in this matter, he couldn't reject them in front of so many people. Hence, he quickly decided to let the two of them participate. However, this was enough for Xuanhuan and Fu Yunshan. The two of them quickly arranged for the other elders to bring the students back as they quickly followed Emperor Jianghu and the rest. Sun Zhongyan had no choice but to do so. Bai Chen was counting the number of people when he inadvertently turned around and realized that Chu Liwei was standing there in a daze, not moving at all. "Liu?" he shouted, but Chu Liwei didn't react at all. "Liu? It's time to go." Chu Liwei then looked over. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes were frighteningly deep and cold. Bai Chen was dazed, and a subtle sense of respect grew in his heart. Chu Liwei seems a little different. She didn't seem to have changed at all, but Bai Chen strangely felt that there was a terrifying aura around her that couldn't be defied. To be precise, it was a terrifying aura that only a superior person would have. He closed his eyes, and when he looked again, he saw that Chu Liwei was already walking over. The aura around her had also disappeared as if it had never existed. "Teacher Bai Chen," shouted Chu Liwei. Seeing that she didn't seem to be acting strangely, Bai Chen felt that he might have sensed wrongly, so he didn't think too much about it. "Liu, the Qingjiao competition has ended. You can go back and have a good rest. The people from that place are here?" asked Chu Liwei suddenly softly. Bai Chen was dazed and nodded. He didn't notice the light that flashed across Chu Liu's eyes. "I heard that the people from that place are very strong?" Chu Liu's voice was very soft, as if she was asking curiously. If someone else asked this question, Bai Chen wouldn't be bothered to answer. However, it was different since the person asking was Chu Liu. He admired Chu Liu before, and Chu Liu's performance in the Qingjiao competition had amazed him. Now that he liked Chu Liu so much, he was naturally willing to answer some of her questions. "That's right. To us, it is a place we can only look at but not reach. Now that they've sent someone here, it's naturally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Chu Liu nodded in understanding. Then she asked jokingly, "Didn't you say that the person who came in first in the midterm assessment can also go and meet them?" Not only did she come in first in the midterm assessment, but she also came in first in the Qingjiao competition. She should be qualified, right? Chu Liu asked, but she was laughing coldly in her heart. She never thought that one day, it would be so difficult for her to even meet someone from the Tianling dynasty. Bai Chen was a little troubled. "That's right, but the situation now, Buzz." The sound of a sword suddenly resounded in the sky. Chu Liu looked up and saw a tall figure with fluttering clothes standing on a long sword. The figure broke through the air. A familiar aura rushed towards her. Her heart was beating wildly as if it would jump out of her mouth at any time. The air in her chest was squeezed out, leaving behind an endless oppressive feeling. Chu Liu clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She stared at that person. That was digression. "I have to catch a plane in the morning. I'll try to finish writing the update on the way and on the plane, but it'll probably be very late. Moa moa. I feel like I'm about to save an explosive update. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Iowa." Chapter 277. The Deputy General of the Tianling Dynasty's Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe. His face was handsome, but there was a scar that extended from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, which made him look more ferocious. Coupled with his cold aura, he made people feel that it was difficult to get close to him. It was a fighting spirit that had been honed through countless life and death experiences on the battlefield. Although more than a year had passed, Chu Luiyue recognized Mu Qinghe immediately. He was one of her most trusted subordinates. When Chu Luiyue saw that it was him, many emotions flashed through her mind. Shock, confusion, doubt. In the Tianling dynasty, everyone knew that the youngest deputy general of the Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe, was the subordinate of the Heavenly Princess. He was born into a lowly family and had been living in exile since young. He had been following Xianxia since he was 13 years old. Later he volunteered to join the Black Cavalry and went to the most dangerous place, Da Huang Swamp. He did his best to gain military merits and was promoted to the position of deputy general in the shortest time possible. When he gained a foothold in the Black Cavalry, Xianxia was about to be in power. At that time he had military power and became a huge pillar of support for Xianxia. Later on, Xianxia was trapped in the Imperial Ancestral Hall, and all the rescue requests they sent were ignored. Among them, Mu Qinghe was sent. Chu Luiyue looked at the familiar face, and many emotions surged in her heart. After she was reborn, she had thought about the situation countless times and felt that something was wrong. Mu Qinghe had been carrying a communication device with him. Logically speaking, he should have received her message. Even if he didn't know, she had been trapped in the Imperial Ancestral Hall for 3 days and 3 nights. According to Mu Qinghe's usual vigilance, he should have realized that something was wrong. However, from the start to the end, she did not see Mu Qinghe appear. There were many strange things and she had her suspicions. However, Mu Qinghe was one of the people she trusted the most. He had followed her for many years and had always been loyal. Chu Luiyue didn't want to continue thinking about it. She even worried that Jiang Yuqing and xuanhuan would do something to Mu Qinghe after her death. But now Mu Qinghe was here representing the Tianling dynasty. In other words, Mu Qinghe had not been implicated in her death for more than a year. According to Jiang Yuqing's personality, how could he easily let go of anyone who had a close relationship with her? Unless, Mu Qinghe's sudden appearance shocked everyone on the spot. Just the powerful aura on his body alone was enough to disdain him. Emperor Xuanhuan reacted first. Vice Admiral Mu. The person who came was actually Mu Qinghe. He had met Mu Qinghe when he went to the Tianling dynasty. At that time he was still with the princess. Now that the princess was no longer around, it was rumored that the person in power had changed. He originally thought that Mu Qinghe would be defeated, but it seemed like he wasn't affected at all. A ray of light flashed under Mu Qinghe's feet, and the long sword rapidly disappeared. He floated in the air and walked down step by step. His footsteps were steady as if he was walking on flat ground. Chu Luiyue pressed her lips against each other. Mu Qinghe had long been a stage 8 warrior. Now that they were outside heaven's canopy, his cultivation level seemed to be suppressed to stage 6. Even so, he was still the strongest existence here. The suppression from a top warrior was substantial, and it made everyone in the square unknowingly respect him. The originally spacious square seemed much more cramped at this moment. Everyone quietened down. They were nervous, excited, and full of respect. Most people even lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at Mu Qinghe directly. Mu Qinghe walked in front of Emperor Xuanhuan. His aura was too strong and it made Emperor Xuanhuan seem much smaller and weaker. "Rongxiao, how have you been?" said Mu Qinghe. His voice was as cold as snow in winter and it was bone-chilling. Emperor Xuanhuan couldn't help but shiver. He bowed slightly and was even more respectful. "Vice Admiral Mu came from afar and we didn't welcome you properly. Please forgive us, Vice Admiral Mu." The two of them had a simple conversation, but it stirred up waves in the crowd's hearts. This man, who's called Vice Admiral Mu, actually dared to call His Majesty by his name. Not only was Emperor Xuanhuan not angry at all, but he was even more respectful and attentive. This showed that this person's identity was definitely more honorable than imagined. "It's fine. This trip was very sudden," said Mu Qinghe lightly. Even though he said that, his face was still expressionless and exceptionally cold. Emperor Xuanhuan was still very nervous and he tried to ask, "Vice Admiral Mu, do you want to change to another place so that you can have a good rest first?" "All right. Don't worry. We've already prepared a place for you, and you can move in immediately. It's already late today, so why don't we officially welcome you tomorrow?" Mu Qinghe thought for a moment and nodded. "Okay." Emperor Xuanhuan heaved a sigh of relief. This person was the princess's favorite, and it was rumored that he was hard to get along with. When Emperor Xuanhuan saw that the envoy was actually him, he was very worried for a while. However, it seemed like it wasn't that exaggerated now. "Then I'll bring you there now." Vice Admiral Mu, please. Emperor Jiawen didn't dare to say the word "I" in front of Mu Qinghe. Mu Qinghe's gaze lightly swept across Emperor Jiawen and the people behind him. Emperor Jiawen didn't know what he was looking at, but he didn't dare to rush him. He could only wait at the side. Mu Qinghe suddenly said, "Qing Jiao competition? It seems like it's not just country Yao Chen. Even the young talents from country Xing Luo and country Huai Song are here?" When xuanhuan heard that, he was elated and immediately took 2 steps forward. "Greetings, Vice Admiral Mu. I'm the director of country Xing Luo's Taiyan Academy, xuanhuan. It's an honor to meet you. For so many years, the Tianling dynasty was still a rumored existence. This was the first time he saw a strong warrior from the Tianling dynasty, and it sounded like he had a high status. If he could take this chance to get close to him, wouldn't it be just a matter of time before he soared to the top?" Mu Qinghe calmly looked at xuanhuan. Suddenly, xuanhuan felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. His entire body was in excruciating pain. The blood in his body flowed rapidly and his ears were ringing. He was shocked and wanted to speak, but he realized that he couldn't even open his mouth. Most people didn't notice this, but Fu Yunshan, Sun Zhongyan and the rest, who were standing nearby, were shocked. No matter what, xuanhuan was a stage 5 celestial physician and a stage 4 warrior. Even if his combat skills weren't top-notch, he wasn't easy to deal with. However, this man, no, he didn't even make a move. He just looked at him, and xuanhuan was suppressed to this extent. His strength was unfathomable. More importantly, this man looked very young. He was at most in his 20s, but he had already reached such a level. After a while, Mu Qinghe retracted her gaze, and xuanhuan felt the pressure on him disappear. His lips and teeth were filled with the strong smell of blood. He took a step back in panic and didn't dare to speak again. Mu Qinghe turned around and was about to leave when she suddenly felt a gaze on her. Her eyes flickered and she turned to look. "Digression, bad news, my plane took off 3 hours later, so I had to wait again. Good news, I don't have to ride on the plane anymore. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Web." Chapter 278. That night, Chu Luiyue did not sleep well. In a blur, she seemed to have had a very long dream. In the dream there were many scenes that kept appearing. However, in the end they were all burnt to a crisp and were all annihilated in a ball of flames. When Rong Xiu arrived, he saw Chu Luiyue lying on the bed, her brows tightly furrowed and her body curled up into a ball, muttering something softly. The moonlight shone through the window, elongating his tall figure. Half of his face was in the light while the other half was in the dark. His eyes were as deep as the sea, but there seemed to be an icy flame burning within them. He walked forward and pulled her into his arms. Chu Luiyue was like a traveler walking in the desert who had finally found an oasis. She subconsciously leaned closer. Rong Xiu bent down and kissed her forehead lightly. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Chu Luiyue grabbed the front of his shirt with both hands. Her eyes were tightly shut, but a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye. Rong Xiu sucked that teardrop away. The tip of his tongue was bitter. He moved back a little and looked at the person in his arms. His voice was low, drifting in the night wind, so low that it was almost inaudible. "What will come will come." The next morning, when Chu Luiyue woke up, she smelled a familiar cold fragrance on her body. She immediately understood that Rong Xiu had come. Actually, even without this smell, she would have been able to guess. In the first half of the night, she had been restless and had nightmares, but in the second half of the night, she had quietly calmed down and become at ease. Only Rong Xiu could be like this. Unknowingly, she had long gotten used to Rong Xiu's existence and gradually developed a dependence on him. A hint of sweetness overflowed from the bottom of her heart. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and walked to the window, looking at Yifeng courtyard. Rong Xiu was not in the courtyard at this moment. She could only see the lush peach tree. A gentle breeze blew, making her much more clear-headed. Since she had already reached this step, she could only continue forward. "Luiyue." Someone was calling her name downstairs. Chu Luiyue tidied up briefly and went downstairs to open the door. It was Teacher Bai Chen. "Teacher Bai Chen? Why are you here?" Bai Chen's expression was a little complicated. There was excitement and worry. He handed over an invitation. "This is the invitation for today's palace banquet. His Majesty wants to welcome that person. You took first place in the midterm examination and performed very well at the youth's meeting, so you are also invited." This was an extremely good thing. After all, not everyone was qualified to meet the envoys of the Tianling dynasty. But Deputy General Mu seemed to treat Chu Luiyue a little differently yesterday. She didn't know if he would take Chu Luiyue's rebuttal to heart. Chu Liyue took the invitation. Thank you, Teacher Bai Chen. I will be punctual tonight. Liyue, Teacher Bai Chen said hesitantly. You have to be careful when you follow Elder Sunday. Are you worried that Deputy General Mu will target me? Chu Liyue immediately guessed Bai Chen's worries. The corners of her mouth curled up. Don't worry. If someone of his status really wanted to do anything to me, he wouldn't have waited until the palace banquet. Bai Chen thought about it and found that was true. What you said is not unreasonable. But it's better to be more cautious. Bai Chen said a few more words before leaving. After Chu Liyue thanked him, she looked at the invitation in her hand again. The corners of her mouth slowly curled up into a smile. She had waited for this day for too long. At noon there was still an hour before the banquet officially started. The seats on the left and right sides of the Jianghu hall were already filled with people. Only a few seats at the head of the table were still empty. Clothes were worn and people were toasting each other. Everyone was chatting with each other and the atmosphere seemed very harmonious. But in fact, everyone's eyes would look up from time to time. They had all come today for that Deputy General Mu of the Tianling dynasty. Mother, you have to help me this time. Rongzhen moved closer to the Empress and begged incessantly. That Deputy General Mu is so powerful, he'll definitely be able to help me recover. She had seen it clearly in the square yesterday. That Deputy General Mu's strength was stronger than anyone she had ever seen before. The Empress felt some hope in her heart. She patted Rongzhen's hand and comforted her in a low voice. Don't worry, Mother will definitely find a chance to help you ask for it. But that Deputy General Mu seems to be a cold person, so I don't know if he will help. Why not? He definitely will. Rongzhen's eyes lit up and her face was full of admiration. Mother, I feel that although he looks cold but, her cheeks blushed. The Empress's heart skipped a beat. Looking at Rongzhen, she had clearly fallen in love with that Mu Qinghe. She had really gone crazy. Jinjin, you, what kind of person are you? You're not someone we can provoke. You'd better get rid of that thought as soon as possible. The smile on Rongzhen's face immediately disappeared. Mother, what do you mean by that? He's the most powerful person I've seen all these years. Even Imperial Brother can't compare to him. Why can't? The Empress hurriedly pulled her arm and quickly scanned the surroundings. Only when she found that no one was paying attention to them did she feel slightly relieved. What else could I mean? You know very well in your heart. Mother will only tell you one thing. This time I only want to help you recover your body. You're not allowed to have any wild thoughts about anything else. That Mu Qinghe was obviously a ruthless person. Not to mention that he didn't like Rongzhen. Even if he did, he could easily toy with Rongzhen in the palm of his hand. Rongzhen had long been raised to be very willful after so many years. When she was around such a person, the slightest carelessness could cost her life. In short, don't mention it again. If this path doesn't work, then we'll do it according to Chu Liyue's method. The Empress's expression became a little more severe. Rongzhen didn't dare to make a fuss anymore and pursed her lips. Got it? But that Chu Liyue is really a fox. He actually dared to seduce me in front of so many people yesterday. The Empress gave her a warning look. Only then did Rongzhen shut her mouth completely, but her disgust for Chu Liyue deepened. If she found out that Chu Liyue still dared to act like this at the banquet today, she would definitely not let Chu Liyue off easily. After Chu Liyue arrived with Elder Sun and the others, she sat down in her seat and waited quietly. She could feel a lot of eyes on her, but she didn't care. She slowly swirled the wine cup in her hand. Until, Tianling Dynasty's Deputy General Mu has arrived. She turned her head to look. Mu Qinghe walked in from outside the door. Emperor Xuanhuan was half a step behind and respectfully invited him to take a seat. For a moment, the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After a while, everyone bowed in unison. Mu Qinghe's gaze swept across the crowd. Almost uncontrollably, his gaze once again landed on Chu Liyue. Emperor Xuanhuan thought that he was still angry about what happened yesterday, so he said eagerly, Vice General Mu, didn't you come here to find some outstanding geniuses? Chu Liyue is one of the best among them. Perhaps you also know that she's a rare martial artist, mystic adept, and heavenly doctor. Mu Qinghe's gaze flickered. What a coincidence, I have an old friend who's also a martial artist. Digression. I'll probably only be able to update one chapter tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, but it won't be as late as today. I'll be back to normal in a few days. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 279. How are you worthy of using this name? This sentence clearly landed in Chu Liyue's ears. She almost couldn't help but laugh. I'm not worthy? This is my name. How am I not worthy? Mu Qinghe's words almost made her think that he was speaking up for her. But, is that possible? If Mu Qinghe had always been loyal to me and never betrayed me, why would I die so tragically a year ago? As for him, how was it possible that he wasn't affected at all after her death? The Black Cavalry's lieutenant was an important position. Jiang Yuqing was very ambitious. How could he let her remaining henchmen continue to occupy these positions? She was almost certain that Mu Qinghe had long sided with Jiang Yuqing without her knowledge. If not, there was really no way to explain everything that happened afterward. Upon seeing his reaction, Chu Luiyue was shocked and felt that it was a joke. Where was he when I asked for help back then? What did he do when I was forced to take my virginity? After I died, he even killed the snow deer and made it into a pair of boots, stepping on it every day. Now he's saying all this again. Don't you find it contradictory? Chu Luiyue had too many questions and too much hatred. All of it accumulated in her heart, making her unable to breathe. But in the end, she still took a deep breath and lowered her head. Even if you think that you're unworthy, you have no right to change it. Lu Yu, what are you talking about? Emperor Jiawen was shocked and immediately reprimanded him. Hurry up and apologize to Vice Admiral Mu. As he spoke, he nervously looked at Mu Qinghe. Vice Admiral Mu, this child is still young and he really didn't mean to contradict you. Please don't take it to heart. Why don't you let Lu Yu change his name? It's just a name. Do you have to make such a fuss? Not to mention a mere Chu Luiyue, even he would not dare to go against Mu Qinghe. Chu Luiyue had always been smart. What was wrong with him today? Mu Qinghe stared at Chu Luiyue. That's not necessary. With that, he turned around and left. His steps seemed slow, but his speed was very fast. Emperor Jiawen gave Chu Luiyue a warning look. You brat. Consider yourself lucky today. Don't do it again, do you understand? Chu Luiyue's tense heart relaxed a little. Even though she knew that Emperor Jiawen was worried that she would be implicated, she still remembered his kindness in helping her. She smiled and her eyes curved. Thank you, Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen grunted, turned around and quickly caught up with Mu Qinghe. The group of figures quickly disappeared before everyone's eyes. After a long while, the quiet square became noisy again. Chu Luiyue heard quite a few people talking about her. I wonder where that Vice Admiral Mu came from. What did he mean when he said that about Chu Luiyue? I thought that he was interested in Chu Luiyue since he has that face. However, it seems like Chu Luiyue has offended him. There are so many people here, but he only talked to Chu Luiyue. I think he's not simple. That person looks like a murderous god. How can he be moved by a woman? I think Chu Luiyue is more mysterious. It was obvious that most people did not think highly of what happened today. Mu Hongyu ran over and nervously asked, Chu Luiyue? Lu Yu? What exactly happened just now? Chu Luiyue lightly said, What else could it be? What else could it be? He's just asking for my name. Besides, he seemed very unhappy with my name. How can you be so calm? That's... Mu Hongyu lowered her voice. That's someone from the Tianling dynasty. Chu Luiyue nodded indifferently. I know. She used to be someone from the Tianling dynasty and was this person's master. You, sigh. Mu Hongyu looked at Chu Luiyue's indifferent expression and felt that it was useless for her to say anything more. Did she know that if she really made that person unhappy, her life would be in danger? Didn't she see that His Majesty was so respectful to him? It was really the case that the eunuch was not worried. Since the competition is over, it's time to go back. Let's go? Chu Luiyue said and walked forward with a calm expression. Mu Hongyu hurriedly caught up and wanted to try her best to persuade Chu Luiyue, but she swallowed her words when she saw Chu Luiyue's tired expression. Chu Luiyue had been competing for the past few days and did not have a good rest. Since things are already like this, let's just let him be. With this thought, Mu Hongyu felt much more relaxed. She then held Chu Luiyue's arm and left. Sai Lu Yu, I saw your previous competition. Gu Mingfeng and Xin Hu also followed. The few of them acted as if nothing had happened, so the others did not say much. After these people left, the remaining people also felt bored and dispersed. The people from Taiyan Academy and Nanfeng Academy also prepared to leave. Xingqian? Xingqian? Emotsang saw that Situ Xingqian was still staring at a certain spot and raised his voice. Situ Xingqian recovered her senses. We should go. Emotsang walked to her side and followed her line of sight. You're looking at that Vice Admiral Mu? Situ Xingqian nodded and felt a little regretful. I didn't expect to see such a person here. Country Xingluo is not inferior to country Yaochen, so why don't we have such a fortuitous encounter? It's naturally not easy for us to guess such a powerful existence, Emotsang muttered. When he recalled Xuanhuan's appearance just now, he felt a little scared. That person's abilities are really unfathomable. Situ Xingqian did not say anything. Actually, other than being shocked by Vice Admiral Mu's appearance, she was more concerned about, why did he look at Chu Luiyue differently? There were tens of thousands of people in the square, and Chu Luiyue was standing further away back then. Why did that man choose Chu Luiyue? In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to Chu Luiyue. Also, what did he mean by those words? To others, perhaps Chu Luiyue was unlucky and might even be punished because of this. However, I didn't sense any killing intent toward Chu Luiyue from that man. I keep feeling that something is amiss. Mu Qinghe was a little distracted throughout the journey. In actual fact, he had not thought of that person for a very long time. For some reason, when he saw that girl today, he subconsciously thought of many things from the past. He wanted to get rid of the images in his mind, but he realized that the more he tried to do so, the clearer he remembered them. Those scenes appeared in front of his eyes again and again. She laughed, she was sad, she was nervous, she was cunning, she was majestic. And her hopeless face. In the end, for some reason, those images overlapped one another and gradually faded away. In the end, only a pair of eyes was left. They were watery, but they were quiet and bright like obsidian. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. Yes, that Chu Luiyue has the same eyes as her. Digression. The sequence of the previous chapter's questions was written wrongly. Please don't mind it and just ignore it. Then I'll get off the plane now and get on the subway. I'll try my best to update the 5th chapter as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 280. That night, Chu Luiyue did not sleep well. Vaguely, she seemed to have had a very long dream. In the dream, many scenes kept appearing. However, in the end, they were all destroyed in a ball of fire. When Rongxiu arrived, he saw Chu Luiyue lying on the bed. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and her body was curled up into a ball. She was muttering something in a low voice. The moonlight shone through the window, elongating his tall figure. Half of his face was in the light, while the other half was in the dark. His eyes were as deep as the sea, but there seemed to be a cold flame burning in them. He stepped forward and took her into his arms. Chu Luiyue was like a traveler in the desert who finally found an oasis. She subconsciously leaned closer to him. Rongxiu lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Chu Luiyue grabbed the front of his clothes with both hands. Her eyes were closed, but a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye. Rongxiu sucked that teardrop away. The tip of his tongue was bitter. He stepped back a little and looked at the person in his arms. His voice was low, drifting in the night wind. It was so low that it could not be heard. What will come will come. The next morning, Chu Luiyue woke up and smelled a familiar cold fragrance on her body. She immediately understood that Rongxiu had come. In fact, even if there was no smell, she could probably guess. In the first half of the night, she was restless and had nightmares. However, in the second half of the night, she quietly calmed down and became at ease. Only Rongxiu could be like this. Unconsciously, she had already gotten used to Rongxiu's existence and gradually developed a dependence on him. A trace of sweetness overflowed from the bottom of her heart. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath, walked to the window and looked at Yifeng courtyard. Rongxiu was not in the courtyard at this time. She could only see the lush peach tree. The breeze blew, waking her up a lot. Since he had already reached this step, he could only continue moving forward. Luyu? Someone was calling her name downstairs. Chu Luiyue simply tidied up and went downstairs to open the door. The person who came was actually Teacher Bai Chen. Teacher Bai Chen? Why are you here? Bai Chen had a complicated expression on his face. He was excited and worried at the same time. He handed over an invitation card. This is the invitation card for today's banquet. His Majesty wanted to hold a welcoming dinner for that person. You came in first place in the midterm assessment, and your performance in the Qingjiao competition was also very outstanding, so you were invited as well. This was supposed to be an excellent thing. After all, not everyone was qualified to meet the Tianling dynasty's envoys. However, Vice Admiral Mu from yesterday seemed to treat Chu Luiyue differently. She wondered if he would take Chu Luiyue's rebuttal to heart. Not to mention that he doesn't like Rongzhen. Even if he did, he could easily play Rongzhen in the palm of his hand. After so many years, Rongzhen was already very willful. When she was beside such a person, she would lose her life if she wasn't careful. Anyway, don't mention it again. If this path doesn't work, we'll do it according to Chu Luiyue's method. The Empress's expression became sterner. Rongzhen didn't dare to make a fuss anymore and pouted. Got it? But that Chu Luiyue is really seductive. He actually dared to seduce me in front of so many people yesterday. The Empress gave her a warning look. Rongzhen then completely shut up, but the hatred she had for Chu Luiyue in her heart deepened. If she found out that Chu Luiyue still dared to do this at the banquet today, she definitely wouldn't let Chu Luiyue have a good time. After Chu Luiyue arrived with old Master Sun and the rest, he sat down in his seat and waited quietly. She could feel many gazes landing on her, but she didn't care. She slowly turned the wine glass in her hand. Until Tianling Dynasty's Vice Admiral Mu arrives. She turned to look. Mu Qinghe was walking in, and Emperor Jiawen was half a step behind him as he respectfully invited him to take a seat. For a moment, the hall was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. After a while, the crowd bowed in unison. Mu Qinghe's gaze swept across the crowd. He almost couldn't control his gaze as it stopped on Chu Luiyue again. Emperor Jiawen thought that he was still angry about yesterday's incident, so he eagerly said, "Vice Admiral Mu, didn't you come here to find some outstanding talents? Chu Luiyue is one of them. You might also know that she's a rare talent, a warrior, a xian master, and a celestial physician." Mu Qinghe's gaze flickered. What a coincidence. I have an old friend who's also a triple talent. Digression, I can only update one chapter at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, but it won't be as late as today. I'll adjust back in the next few days. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 281. That's such a coincidence. Emperor Jiawen had just heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Mu Qinghe wasn't smiling. Instead, she looked at Chu Luiyue with a judgmental gaze. Only then did he realize that this didn't seem to make Mu Qinghe happy. You're a triple cultivator? Which one is more outstanding? Asked Mu Qinghe lightly. The hall was very quiet as the emperor's gaze shifted between Mu Qinghe and Chu Luiyue. Mu Qinghe treated Chu Luiyue differently yesterday, and she picked me to talk to when she just arrived today. It would be a blatant lie if I said that I didn't treat Chu Luiyue well. I just don't know if this is a good or bad sign. Before Chu Luiyue could speak, Sun Zhongyan spoke first. Lu Yu took first place in the warrior and xian master competitions. As for the celestial physician, she's also very outstanding. Yesterday, he heard this person mention to Emperor Jiawen that he seemed to have the intention to select some outstanding talents. Even if he really didn't like Chu Luiyue, he probably wouldn't go overboard on account of her talent. Mu Qinghe's expression didn't change. Oh, it seems like you're an all-rounder? Chu Luiyue could hear the mockery in his voice. He had been by her side for many years, and she was very familiar with his words and actions. Even though his face was always expressionless, Chu Luiyue could always guess what he was thinking. It seems like he clearly doesn't think highly of my all-rounder. Rong Xiao said that you're 14 this year. What's your warrior level? Vice Admiral Mu, Stage 2. What's your xian master level? Second 2. What grade of pill can you refine? 4th grade. Mu Qinghe chuckled. It seems like you're only slightly talented in celestial physician, but that's all. Chu Luiyue curtsied. Your Majesty and Elder Sun are overpraising him. With Lu Yu's insignificant talent, Vice Admiral Mu naturally wouldn't take a liking to him. Mu Qinghe saw that her expression was calm and did not show any signs of anger. The inexplicable anger in her heart from being offended dissipated a lot. At least you know your place. Back then, when that person was 14 years old. Mu Qinghe seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly turned cold. Why was he thinking of that person again? She was not the only all-rounder in this world, but how many could be compared to her? He didn't say anything else and walked back to his seat with a cold face. Emperor Jiawen was beside him, and he very sensitively felt that the latter's aura suddenly became much colder. Hence he couldn't help but feel even more confused. What's going on? Weren't they having a good chat just now? Chu Luiyue's every word was very appropriate, and there was no problem at all. Why does Mu Qinghe not like me? Even if Chu Luiyue's talent can't be compared to those people from the Tianling dynasty, he's definitely considered one of the top talents in country Yaoqian. So he was thinking about something else when he poured the wine just now? When he's deep in thought, he often gets distracted and takes the wrong things. It seems like this is the same as before. Emperor Jiawen realized something and hurriedly scolded the palace maid beside him. How did you serve him? Who put this wine on the table? Your Majesty, please forgive me. A palace maid anxiously knelt down and begged for mercy. However, she felt very wronged. Who knew that this VIP didn't drink wine? Isn't he a general from the military? Why doesn't he drink wine? Chu Luiyue quickly looked down, and a tinge of panic flashed across her face. Lu Yu was too rash and it's all my fault. Vice Admiral Mu and Your Majesty, please don't implicate others. Rong Zhen proudly grunted. Let's see if she still dares to be so impudent. Originally Mu Qinghe didn't like her. Now that this happened, let's see if she still dares to be so arrogant. Didn't she just get first place in the Qingjiao competition? What's there to be proud of? Can't she see that I don't even like her? Rong Zhen didn't think that if Mu Qinghe didn't like Chu Luiyue, he wouldn't like anyone else in the palace. Mu Qinghe's face darkened for a while. Just as the crowd was thinking about how he was going to punish Chu Luiyue, he said, "Don't worry. Forget it. Digression, I'll update it as soon as possible today so everyone should be able to read it together tonight. Myo mobile users, please browse and read it. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 282. The crowd couldn't figure out Mu Qinghe's thoughts, so they all quietened down. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue was very calm as if nothing had happened. She sat down and allowed all sorts of gazes to size her up. She could roughly guess that Mu Qinghe recalled the past, but she didn't know where his anger came from. After meeting him this time, she realized that Mu Qinghe's personality seemed to have changed a lot. Even though he was quiet in the past, he wasn't as unpredictable as he was now. Emperor Jiawen came out to smooth things over. "Haha, Vice Admiral Mu, you said yesterday that you came here to pick some people to cultivate with you. Is that true?" Everyone's attention immediately shifted to Mu Qinghe. Countless pairs of eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement. Follow Mu Qinghe back? Isn't that going to the Tianling dynasty? This is a great opportunity. The Tianling dynasty is such a powerful existence. In the entire country Yao Qin, only Emperor Jiawen has the right to go there. The others don't even need to think about it. I didn't expect to have such a chance now. Mu Qinghe actually came here personally to pick people. That's right. Mu Qinghe's short two words immediately made the crowd's heart skip a beat. Even though Emperor Jiawen already knew about this yesterday, he still felt very excited when it was brought up. There was an unconcealable glow of excitement in that pair of old eyes that were always calm and unperturbed. Almost all of country Yao Chen's most outstanding talents are here. Take a look and see if there's anyone you like. Other than the princes and princesses, there were also important figures from the various aristocratic families, Tianlu Academy's elder son, and the rest. Of course, there were also Fu Yunshan and Qinghan. Upon hearing Mu Qinghe's affirmative answer, the two of them looked at each other and saw the eagerness in each other's eyes. Mu Qinghe actually came here to pick people. He even wants to bring them back to the Tianling dynasty. I really don't know what kind of luck country Yao Qin has. However, since we're here, we might as well join in. After all, there were many outstanding geniuses in the two academies. As long as one was chosen, their future was limitless. Mu Qinghe swept her gaze across the crowd. Those who were seen by him unconsciously straightened their shoulders and held their breaths. Vice Admiral Mu. Rong Jin suddenly stood up. I wonder if I can recommend myself? Out of habit he wanted to say this consort, but he suddenly remembered that even Imperial Father didn't dare to call himself Zhen in front of Mu Qinghe, so he hurriedly changed his words. Emperor Jiawen didn't expect Rong Jin to take the initiative and was very surprised. But on second thought, Rong Jin was the most talented among all the princes, so he could give it a try. If even he couldn't do it, then there was no need to mention the others. After all, he was the crown prince. He should have the courage and insight. Mu Qinghe glanced at him. Rank 4 warrior? Such a powerhouse would be able to tell the level of other cultivators with just a glance. Rong Jin nodded nervously. In another month, I should be able to break through to rank 5 warrior. The crowd stared at him in shock. It wasn't easy to break through to rank 5 warrior, and many people were stuck at this stage their entire lives. But since Rong Jin dared to say this in front of everyone, he must be confident. Sensing the crowd's reaction, Rong Jin was delighted. Even though he lost to Heng Jingchua at the Qingjiao competition a few days ago and was poisoned, it wasn't without benefits. After clearing the poison in his body, he shockingly realized that he seemed to have signs of breaking through. He had been cultivating diligently for the past 2 days, and he had vaguely touched that invisible barrier. Hence, he concluded that he could definitely break through in another month. This was actually a pleasant surprise. He originally wanted to wait until he really broke through, but he couldn't care less now. As long as he could get Mu Qinghe's praise, then, should? There's no should or shouldn't when it comes to cultivation. As long as you don't break through, you're still a stage 4 warrior. Mu Qinghe's voice was cold as if she wasn't moved. Rong Jin was dazed. He looked up and saw the obvious indifference in Mu Qinghe's eyes. This was the attitude of a strong warrior towards an ant. Rong Jin was dazed. You should be over 20 years old this year, right? Rong Jin nodded hesitantly. Mu Qinghe snorted. Then how can you stand here and say that you're volunteering yourself? What right do you have? Rong Jin didn't expect to be humiliated by Mu Qinghe in front of so many people. His face flushed red. Mu Qinghe's every word made him feel extremely embarrassed. He had been outstanding since he was young, and he had always been praised by others. This was the first time he was looked down upon. Emperor Jianghu looked awkward. Rong Jin thought for a while and suddenly smiled playfully. Lieutenant Mu, my brother is already the most outstanding. If you don't even like him, then no one here will be able to catch your eye. Her smile was bright, and her tone was light as if she was acting coquettishly. Mu Qinghe glanced at her. Rong Jin's heart raced. She was nervous and expectant. Who are you? Mu Qinghe coldly spat out a few words. The smile on Rong Jin's face froze. The palace was dead silent. Chu Liyue looked down and played with the empty wineglass in his hand as his lips curved up. Mu Qinghe climbed up from the bottom, so she was very determined. After he became her right-hand man, countless girls wanted to throw themselves at him. Of all shapes and sizes, what had he not seen before? But before she died, he was 27 years old, and he still didn't have a wife or concubine. Rong Jin really didn't deserve to be ranked. He didn't know where she got her confidence from to think that Mu Qinghe would fall for her tricks. Rong Jin had never been humiliated like this in public, and her face was as pale as a sheet. Emperor Jianghu was already scolding Rong Jin in his heart. How stupid. Can't she see that even I don't dare to speak up for Rong Jin? She actually dares to speak up like this? She's really embarrassing the royal family. You don't have the right to speak. He harshly chided. Rong Jin's eyes turned red and tears fell. The empress gave a look to the person behind her to pull Rong Jin back before letting her sit down again. The atmosphere in the palace became even colder. Mu Qinghe asked. Among you, who has a Daijingyuan meridian? Daijingyuan meridian. The moment these few words came out, it made everyone's faces turn silly. How many years did it take for a genius to have a Daijingyuan meridian to appear? It was fine if Mu Qinghe didn't say it, but she actually had such high standards once she opened her mouth. If she were to find someone based on this standard, none of the people here would be qualified. It seems like there aren't any. Chu Liyue's heart tingled and he stood up. I am. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 283. The woman in front of him was beautiful and had curved eyebrows and eyes. Her eyes were very similar to hers. But if one looked carefully, there were some differences. She used to be as high as the sun, high above the clouds and unparalleled in the world. Even if she just stood there, she could make people submit to her and not dare to blaspheme her. However, the Chu Liyue in front of him had more of a worldly aura. Although her eyes looked clear, if one looked carefully, one would find that there were too many things hidden in Chu Liyue's eyes. Curiosity, eagerness, flattery, and a trace of expectation. He had seen too many people looking at him like this. People who wanted to get something from him would always look at him like this. Probably because she was still young, although her expression was very calm, her eyes couldn't lie. The subtle feeling in Mu Qinghe's heart gradually dissipated. The pair of eyes in his mind gradually became clear and became two people. It's okay. He suddenly felt a little bored. Without saying anything more, he turned around and left. Hong Yao reluctantly looked at Chu Liyue and then followed Mu Qinghe. This time it was very obedient and didn't look back. Vice Admiral Mu, take care. Chu Liyue bowed respectfully. When Mu Qinghe's figure gradually disappeared in front of her, the eager smile on her face gradually disappeared. She pursed her lips into a straight line, looking a little cold. She had fooled him today, but she had to be more careful in the future. Fortunately, Hong Yao had always been very obedient. After sensing her thoughts, it really didn't pounce on her again. Chu Liyue stood in place for a long time. It wasn't until her neck itched that she came to her senses. She looked down and saw Dumpling squatting on her shoulder, looking at her pitifully with a pair of round eyes. Chu Liyue tapped its head. You feel wronged? You almost got me into big trouble today, do you know that? Dumpling actually fought with Hong Yao in front of so many people. If Mu Qinghe pursued the matter, not to mention Dumpling, even she would have to bear the consequences. Dumpling rubbed her cheeks ingratiatingly. Hong Yao has a noble status and is very powerful. Don't provoke it in the future. Chu Liyue continued. However, when Dumpling heard this, she immediately stared at Chu Liyue with her eyes wide open, full of accusation. You're actually speaking up for that guy. Who exactly is your magical beast? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and looked at it. Today should be the first time you met the red demon, right? Why are you so hostile? It didn't provoke you. Dumpling shook her head frantically. He had provoked them. He had provoked them. That guy actually dared to throw himself into Chu Luiyue's arms. How audacious. Plucking a tuft of hair was just a simple lesson to it. If there was a second time, let's see how I'll deal with it. Seeing Dumpling's high fighting spirit, Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment and simply gave up trying to persuade it. Although Dumpling hadn't been with her for long, she had already figured out its character. Since it dared to openly attack Hong Yao in the main hall today, it would only fight more fiercely in private. It was useless to persuade it. Your temper is really like Hong Yao's, Chu Luiyue muttered softly, but she didn't say the rest of the sentence. If it was in the past she could at least mediate, but the situation was different now. Hong Yao's identity was extraordinary, and it could almost do whatever it wanted in country Yaoqian. If Dumpling continued to target it and even fought with it, people with ulterior motives would definitely not let her off easily. Chu Luiyue's slender and fair fingers gently tapped Dumpling's nose. If you're not obedient, I won't bring you out next time. This sentence finally worked, and a hint of hesitation flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I can't come out with Chu Luiyue, what should I do if that fellow takes advantage of the situation? In the end, it could only nod its head unwillingly. Chu Luiyue sighed softly. For some reason she had a feeling. When Hong Yao and Dumpling meet again they will definitely fight again. Let's go. There's still a lot of trouble waiting for us in the future. Clatter. Inside the room the sound of all sorts of things being smashed could be heard. It wasn't hard to imagine the anger of the owner. The palace servants all stood in the courtyard and looked inside from time to time, trembling in fear. Are you done? The Empress's authoritative voice sounded, and Rong Zhen, who was on the verge of losing control, finally found a trace of rationality. She glanced at the Empress, and her eyes were red as if she had suffered a great grievance. But this time the Empress didn't console her like before. Instead she was even angrier. You're still feeling wronged? Do you know what you've done today? That person is the envoy of the Tianling dynasty, and he has seen many tricks up his sleeves. Your thoughts have already been seen through by him. Who do you think you are? Rong Zhen looked at the Empress in disbelief. Ever since she was young, her mother had always doted on her. Even if she was willful and rash, her mother would always reprimand her. She had never been reprimanded by her mother like this before. Rong Zhen's face turned pale, and her body swayed as if she couldn't take such a blow. But the Empress didn't intend to stop. She took a few steps forward and stood in front of Rong Zhen, looking at her sternly. Do you know that if you weren't careful today not only would you lose your life, but other people would also be implicated? Look at your brother. Isn't that the case? It's fine if you throw a tantrum in the past, but how dare you be so impudent today? I. Rong Zhen's body trembled and tears kept falling. Mother? What did I do wrong? I only said a few words. Aren't those few words enough? The Empress suddenly raised her voice, scaring Rong Zhen so much that she shivered, and fear and panic appeared in her eyes. Seeing her like this, how could the Empress's heart not ache? But today she was determined to teach Rong Zhen proper manners. Otherwise, with her temperament, she would sooner or later bring harm to everyone. It's fine if something happens to you, but can you bear the responsibility if it harms your brother? Today, Rong Zhen had embarrassed himself in front of everyone, and the Empress was both heartbroken and afraid. On the one hand, she was worried that this would be a huge blow to Rong Zhen. On the other hand, she was worried that this would affect His Majesty's view of Rong Zhen. If what happened today were to spread, Rong Zhen's situation would become even more difficult in the future. Rong Zhen looked up in disbelief. Mother actually said that it was fine if something happened to me? Brother. Ever since I was young I've done a lot for brother. She sneered. Mother, even if I'm in the wrong today, is brother really completely innocent? He's useless and can't compare to Chu Luiyue, so Vice Admiral Mu didn't take a liking to him. He's useless. But mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 284. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved into crescents as she heaved a sigh of relief. However, she wasn't happy at all. Instead, she was confused. Mu Qinghe seemed to care a lot about the Daijingyuan meridian. Did he come to country Yaoqian specifically to find a genius with the Daijingyuan meridian? However, in the Tianling dynasty such people weren't common, but they weren't rare either. Why did he come all the way here to find them? Everyone looked at Chu Luiyue in shock. It took them a while to come back to their senses. What did this mean? Chu Luiyue really had the Daijingyuan meridian? Didn't that mean that she could follow Mu Qinghe to the Tianling dynasty? Mu Qinghe put away the stone. Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Vice Admiral Mu, since it's proven that I have the Daijingyuan meridian, then what you said before, Mu Qinghe was expressionless. You can indeed follow me back since you have the Daijingyuan meridian. Chu Luiyue held her breath. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart beating fast. Don't be happy too early. Having the Daijingyuan meridian is just the beginning. There are other requirements. If you can't meet them, you won't be able to go. Mu Qinghe said calmly. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu. Luiyue will do his best. She knew that things weren't that simple. However, this was still an opportunity. It was even more in line with her thoughts. Although she wanted to go back as soon as possible and let those people experience the pain she had experienced, she knew very well that now wasn't the best time. With her current strength, she would just be courting death if she went back and fought them head-on. Mu Qinghe grunted. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief, but the others had mixed feelings. Everyone present had come with hope, but the requirements for the Daijingyuan meridian were too high, and they could not fulfill them. In the end, it was Chu Luiyue who came out on top again. How could they be happy about this? Emperor Xuanhuan hesitated for a while, but he still carefully asked, Vice Admiral Mu, do you really only want people with the Daijingyuan meridian? Actually, there are some. Although they are not the Daijingyuan meridian, they are still very good. Why don't you pick some more? If they're all like him, then there's no need to say anything more. Mu Qinghe's gaze swept past Rong Jin. Rong Jin was even more embarrassed. As the crown prince, he had never experienced such a thing. Even when his father grounded him and took back many of his rights, he had never felt so humiliated. This was equivalent to giving him a few tight slaps in front of everyone. Emperor Xuanhuan didn't know how to reply at that moment. Not to mention Rong Jin, even he didn't dare to show any displeasure when someone said that to him. Hearing Mu Qinghe's words, he couldn't continue and could only shut his mouth awkwardly. The entire palace's atmosphere became even stranger and colder. However, Chu Luiyue was very calm as he calmly ate his food and ignored the surrounding gazes. Rong Jin clenched her teeth and hated Chu Luiyue for getting this rare opportunity one moment, and she was also annoyed at her previous rashness the next moment. After being reprimanded by Mu Qinghe, she originally felt very humiliated. However, when she saw that Mu Qinghe treated the others the same way, including Rong Jin, she didn't feel so angry anymore. When she gradually calmed down, she also felt that her previous actions were a little overboard. Who is Mu Qinghe? He's the Tianling dynasty's envoy. He's the high and mighty lieutenant. Even father has to give in to him, so what if I'm reprimanded by him? Besides, I'm still counting on Mu Qinghe to help me heal my body. Thinking of this, she gave the Empress a look. The Empress saw the urgency in Rong Jin's eyes and naturally knew what she meant. However, this made her even more frustrated. Does Rong Jin think that I don't want to ask Mu Qinghe for help? Why doesn't she know? Look at the situation now. First it was the crown prince, then it was Rong Jin. This pair of siblings was reprimanded in front of so many people, and she lost all her face. If they really made Mu Qinghe unhappy, he could casually kill them with one finger. How could she speak now? Seeing that the Empress didn't move, Rong Jin couldn't help but feel anxious and even wanted to get up a few times. Luckily, the palace servants standing behind her had already received the Empress's signal and silently held her back. Rong Jin was very unhappy, but she didn't dare to really make a scene in this place, so she could only bear with it. At this point, something suddenly flew in from outside the door. Chu Luiyue took a look and was suddenly stunned. It was a green sparrow. It was only the size of a palm and its entire body was green. However, its claws and eyes were red. Especially its pair of eyes. They were as bright as rubies and were very beautiful. This green sparrow flapped its wings and flew very quickly, but it didn't make any sound. Hence, when the people in the palace discovered it, it had already rushed to the center of the palace. Stop it. Rong Jin frowned and hollered. What are you doing? What kind of place is this? Can't even stop these random things? The guards outside rushed in one after another, but they couldn't say anything after hearing Rong Jin's scolding. The flying speed of this thing was simply too fast. They couldn't stop it in time. Your Highness, please calm down. We have important guests here today. This is my fiend. Mu Qinghe, who was sitting at the head of the table, suddenly spoke. Rong Jin's remaining words were suddenly stuck in his throat, and his entire body froze. His limbs were cold. Mu Qinghe waved his hands and the green sparrow flew toward him. Silence reigned in the hall. The green sparrow landed in Mu Qinghe's hands. Mu Qinghe glanced at it and saw that there was a trace of blood under its wings. He knitted his brows slightly, and a cold light flashed across his eyes. "You're injured? Who hurt you?" The green sparrow moved its wings and covered the blood stains. Mu Qinghe knitted his brows even tighter. Hong Yao was a 7th grade fiend. It was very strong and rarely lost. Yesterday it was a little anxious for some reason, so he let it out. He didn't expect it to be injured. Who else in country Yao Chen has such capabilities? Hong Yao bit the feathers on its wings, feeling wronged. Mu Qinghe said coldly, "Why didn't you say before? What did you promise before coming here? That you wouldn't cause any trouble. Are you obedient now?" Hong Yao didn't expect to be scolded even when it was injured, and it felt even more wronged. Its beautiful ruby-like eyes didn't blink, but they quickly filled with tears, making it look very pitiful. Mu Qinghe suddenly sighed in his heart. Hong Yao has really been spoiled by that person. It feels wrong just by saying a few words. "Hong Yao," Mu Qinghe's voice became stricter. Hong Yao suddenly turned around. Suddenly, it paused and looked at Chu Luiyue in a daze. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. The next moment he saw the small red sparrow flying toward him. Digression, Khan was so stuck that he wanted to die. His computer screen suddenly turned white again. The last chapter will be updated before midnight. I'm so unlucky today that I have nothing to say. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 285. News of what happened at the palace banquet quickly spread among the aristocratic families in the imperial capital. Chu Luiyue also became the topic of discussion. First, she took first place twice in the Qingjiao competition. Then, she was chosen to follow Mu Qinghe to the Tianling dynasty because of her Daijingyuan meridian. In just a few days, Chu Luiyue became famous. She became the envy of everyone. Ordinary people might not know, but the important figures in the aristocratic families all knew what the Tianling dynasty meant. From now on, Chu Luiyue would have a meteoric rise and a bright future ahead of her. The palace banquet ended in the afternoon, but Chu Luiyue had already received many gifts at night. She didn't need to look to know that those were people who wanted to get close to her, so she rejected all of them. After returning to the academy, she even chose to enter Jiuyo Tower to cultivate, regardless of the storm outside. At the Chu residence. Chu Xiao returned to the Chu residence with a gloomy face. The servants trembled in fear when they saw his expression and didn't dare to say anything. However, this situation was quickly changed. Since the afternoon, people kept asking to see him. And they were all asking for the same thing. What? Let Chu Ning and his daughter return to the Chu family? Hearing their suggestion, Chu Xiao exploded like gunpowder that had been ignited. That's impossible. Don't even think about it. Chu Ning and his daughter had already broken off all ties with the Chu family. Everyone in the imperial capital knew that they were at odds with each other. If they were to discuss this matter with them now, it would be equivalent to them admitting defeat. By then, the entire Chu family would become the laughingstock of the imperial capital. Chu Xiao felt uncomfortable every time he thought of that. He was determined not to agree. However, the members of the Chu family who had always obeyed him were also very determined this time. Great Elder, things are different now. The news that Chu Luiyue was chosen to go to the Tianling dynasty has already spread among the aristocratic families. Even if she had a huge conflict with us in the past, we are still family. The same blood flows in our bodies. Why can't we let it go? That's right. She's no longer the useless trash that she used to be. Needless to say, her achievements in the future will definitely be great. This is also a great opportunity for the Chu family. Grand Elder, it's not as if we don't have your concerns. However, if we continue to fight with them, we'll only be at a disadvantage. After today, how many people in the imperial capital will want to get close to Chu Luiyue? She's still from the family? As long as we take the initiative to ask for peace, she will definitely give us face. Listening to their hopeful words one after another, Chu Xiao was extremely irritated. He abruptly interrupted them and shouted angrily, "Let's go! Don't you know what kind of Chu Luiyue? If you ask her for peace now, you're just asking for your own humiliation." Everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling a little troubled. In fact, how could they not know this point? But wasn't there no other way? Could it be that he could only watch helplessly as such a great opportunity was missed? Compared to the Tianling dynasty, what was this little bit of face? As long as they could repair their relationship with Chu Luiyue, they could have whatever they wanted in the future. Great Elder, we all know that you don't like Chu Luiyue. However, shouldn't you think about the entire Chu family now? Third Elder suddenly spoke, his tone slightly cold. Chu Zhao's expression turned stern. What do you mean? The third elder smiled. Nothing. We all know why Chu Luiyue left the Chu family. To be honest, it's because of you. It's not a big deal if you're safe. However, Chu Luiyue is different now. We're in a favorable position. Wouldn't it be a pity if we give up just like that? The others nodded. Chu Ning and his daughter are not unreasonable people. As long as we sincerely apologize, I believe we can salvage the situation. Chu Xiao scolded angrily. You're crazy. Great Elder, we're not crazy. This is our only choice now. Third Elder was not frightened by Chu Zhao's anger at all, and his expression did not change. Our Chu family has been declining all these years, and our situation is not good. It wasn't easy to nurture Chu Xianmin, but she's basically useless now. Now that we finally have a top talent like Chu Luiyue, we have no reason not to seize the opportunity, right? No matter what, she's someone that Vice Admiral Mu thinks highly of. What's wrong with us lowering our heads? When she becomes successful in the future, it'll be many times harder for us to do all this. The third elder's words immediately drew everyone's agreement. Everyone discussed fervently, implying that they hoped Chu Xiao would be the representative to apologize to Chu Ning and his daughter and invite them back to the Chu family. Chu Xiao was annoyed. Say whatever you want. If you want to build a relationship with Chu Luiyue, go ahead. In any case, this old man will definitely not go. Third elder smiled faintly. Great Elder, you're so stubborn. I wonder what the head of the family will think when he comes out and finds out about this? Chu Zhao's expression froze. He had almost forgotten about this. The head of the family had been in seclusion for too long, and he had already regarded himself as the head of the Chu family. Although Third Elder's words were unpleasant, they were not without reason. He could ignore the others but not the head of the family. It would be hard for him to explain himself then. After hesitating for a long time, Chu Zhao's expression changed several times before he finally agreed. Give Chu Luiyue. Forget it. Chapter 286. Hong Yao tilted its head to one side, making it clear that it didn't want to talk to Mu Qinghe. Mu Qinghe stared at Hong Yao. Your temper is getting worse and worse. Hong Yao glared at her with tears in its eyes. When she was here before, she never dared to treat it like this. Only a short time had passed, but its life was getting worse and worse. It had suffered enough in the past year. Mu Qinghe was such a stupid master. The more Hong Yao thought about it, the angrier it became. It couldn't wait to go back and find Chu Luiyue. But it knew that Mu Qinghe would definitely not agree. Besides, that guy was still here. Its fur had been plucked off. Bang. Hong Yao was so angry that it simply lay straight on the ground. I won't go. I can't live like this. Mu Qinghe's eyes twitched. It's useless for you to throw a tantrum. Hong Yao didn't move. It was determined not to go with him. It might as well just let it die. Thinking of how it was injured by a beast that had been imprisoned for many years when it went out yesterday, Hong Yao felt ashamed. And today it was treated like this by Mu Qinghe. It couldn't live like this. Mu Qinghe closed his eyes hard and tried to control his emotions, lest he accidentally killed his demonic beast. Who hurt you? If you are willing to tell me, I can help you take revenge. Hong Yao's eyes moved, but its body was still tense. It thought for a while and was in a dilemma. You can even get injured in such a place. It seems that you haven't been diligent in cultivation during this period of time. Mu Qinghe's following words successfully made Hong Yao give up the idea of asking him for help. A green flame ignited on its body, burning away the remaining bloodstains. Mu Qinghe raised his eyebrows and was a little surprised. Hong Yao had always liked to make trouble outside and then let him clean up the mess. He didn't expect it to be so courageous today. Since you don't want to tell me, I'll ask another question. Mu Qinghe's eyes were as sharp as a substance. He stared at Hong Yao as if he wanted to see through it. Just now in the main hall, you, Vice Admiral Mu. Before Mu Qinghe could finish her sentence, she was suddenly interrupted by a clear female voice. He turned around and saw that it was Chu Luiyue. What a coincidence. Mu Qinghe's expression changed and she glanced at Hong Yao. The red demon lying on the ground suddenly froze. It's over. He had been seen. This was too embarrassing. Without thinking, it flew up from the ground and rushed up. Then it circled around Mu Qinghe, not forgetting to dive down to the ground in the middle, pretending that it was also around Mu Qinghe. From afar it looked like a jubilant butterfly. Mu Qinghe was speechless. Chu Luiyue walked closer and asked in a surprised tone. Vice Admiral Mu, your magic beast looks really lively. Yes, he was still as good as ever. His ability to play dead and act shamelessly was still the same as before. Mu Qinghe was speechless. Hong Yao, who was flying excitedly, suddenly felt embarrassed. For a moment, it didn't know whether it should continue to fly. It staggered and almost fell from the air. In the end, it could only lower its head and accept its fate. What's the matter? Mu Qinghe coughed, but there was still no expression on her face. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. There is one thing I want to ask you for help with. I don't know if you are willing to agree. Say it. According to Mu Qinghe's character, she was never interested in this kind of thing. If it was before today, he would definitely not say a word when Chu Luiyue talked to him like this. But thinking of Hong Yao's reaction to her, Mu Qinghe felt that maybe she should find an opportunity to get to know Chu Luiyue more. Chu Luiyue bowed. I have a friend whose mother has been ill for many years. Her condition has worsened recently. I wonder if Vice Admiral Mu can help? Luiyue will definitely be very grateful. Mu Qinghe frowned. Your friend? Chu Luiyue nodded. Mu Hongyu. She is country Yao Chen's Princess Xuanhuan. Mu Qinghe didn't care if Mu Hongyu was a princess or not. Even if it was Emperor Jiaowen, he might not be willing to help. However, Hong Yao and you hit it off very well. For its sake, I can help you. Chu Luiyue looked surprised and looked at Hong Yao. Then I really have to thank Hong Yao. Her red lips moved slightly as she softly called out its name. She was the one who named Hong Yao. Back then, when Mu Qinghe was hunting fiends, she coincidentally obtained Hong Yao, but she didn't know what to call it. Chu Luiyue thought that it was a green sparrow, and Mu Qinghe also had the word Qing in her name. Thus, they were considered to be fated. Hence, he purposely gave it the opposite name, Hong Yao. Now, when he called out this name again, things had changed. Hong Yao was stunned and instinctively wanted to fly toward Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue glanced at it. The human and fiend looked at each other and undercurrents surged. Hong Yao suddenly paused. I don't seem to want to now. It stared at Chu Luiyue and couldn't wait to run over and complain to Mu Qinghe. Dumpling squatted on Chu Luiyue's shoulder and stared at it warily. Hong Yao felt a dull pain at the spot where the feathers were plucked off. After hesitating for a long time, it finally didn't go over and could only bury its head under its wings. No one saw the tears rolling down its cheeks, all of them falling into its feathers. After a while, its wings were wet. Seeing it like this, Chu Luiyue felt very sorry for it. Hong Yao had always been arrogant and often made a lot of trouble. But when it was really sad, it would only bury its head in its wings and cry, just like now. How could she not want to hug Hong Yao? Since her rebirth, everything she thought of in her previous life was like a dream. All the true feelings were fake and all the loyalty was betrayal. In the end, Hong Yao was the only one who missed her. Seeing Hong Yao like this, she felt that the pain that went deep into her bones was a little comforted. But now was not a good time. Mu Qinghe said, I will stay here for a while. Let her come here. I will send a celestial physician to treat her. As the deputy general of the Black Cavalry, he had great power. It was not difficult for him to mobilize a few celestial physicians. Chu Luiyue looked away with a polite and eager smile on her face. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu. After saying that, she asked hesitantly, but Vice Admiral Mu means that you won't leave immediately? Didn't he come here to pick people with the Daijingyuan Meridian? Apart from that, was there something else? Mu Qinghe replied with a faint "emichem," but didn't say anything else. Chu Luiyue knew that she wasn't qualified to ask so much now, so she didn't say anything and just curtsied. In that case, Luiyue won't waste your time. I'll take my leave first. After saying that, she took a step back and turned to leave. Stop. Mu Qinghe suddenly said. Chu Luiyue stopped in her tracks, turned around and asked with a smile, Vice Admiral Mu, is there anything else? Digression, when I go out today it will probably be very late. Don't wait during the day. Let's read it together at night. So how much do you owe now? Woo mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. However, each layer of barriers was like layers of fog, concealing everything and making it impossible to see anything clearly. A question suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. Since only Stage 5 warriors could go up to the 5th level, did the top few levels have the same rules? For example, only Stage 7 warriors could go up to the 7th level? However, there were no cultivators outside Heaven's canopy who could break through to this level. If that was the case, then what was the point of the top few levels of Jiu Tower? One had to know that in the entire country Yao Qin, the strongest was only a Stage 5 warrior. There wasn't even a Stage 6 warrior. In other words, with Jiu Tower here, everyone could only go up to the 5th level at most. Who placed such a powerful Jiu Tower here? Chu Luiyue recalled that Bai Chen had specially introduced Jiu Tower when she was in the academy. However, at that time he only mentioned that the pit of heavenly origins was under Jiuyou Tower, so the density of force in the tower was much better than the outside world. However, he didn't say anything else. A large part of the reason why Chu Luiyue wanted to enter Tianlu Academy was because of Jiuyou Tower. However, she now felt that there were too many secrets buried in Jiuyou Tower. She looked at Dumpling. Shall we continue? When Chu Luiyue entered Jiuyou Tower and broke through the fifth barrier, Rongxiu had just returned to Yifeng courtyard from Prince Li's mansion. Yan Qing followed closely behind and quickly reported the day's events to Rongxiu. Rongxiu lay down on the rattan chair. His expression was calm and no one could tell if he was happy or angry. Has the time been set? Yan Qing bowed. Not yet. From what Vice Admiral Mu said, it seems like he will be staying here for a while. He also seems to be planning to test Miss Lu Yu again. He will only bring Miss Lu Yu to the Tianling dynasty after she passes all of them. Rongxiu's lips curled into a faint smile. Of course he won't go back immediately. Mu Qinghe came here because she had other important matters to attend to. You said that she was the one who mentioned that she had a Daijingyuan meridian? Rongxiu asked calmly. Yan Qing bowed and replied respectfully, yes. Yes. Rongxiu remained silent for a while. He crossed his fingers and his eyes darkened slightly. It seems like she really wants to go. Yan Qing sensed that something was wrong with her master's aura. She hesitated for a while and said, to the people of country Yao Chen, it's a great opportunity to go to the Tianling dynasty. It's reasonable for Miss Lu Yu to want to go. Besides, Miss Lu Yu is very talented. It's a pity for her to stay here. Rongxiu closed his eyes gently. Of course he knew this. However, he was more concerned about something else. Suddenly he opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Jiuyou Tower. Yan Qing was shocked. Master, what's wrong? Chapter 288. Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling. Dumpling, are you going to stop? This is already the 6th floor. It was obvious that only stage 7 warriors could go further up. Dumpling blinked and looked up again, seemingly puzzled by Chu Luiyue's question. There was nothing here, so of course they had to continue going up. Chu Luiyue held her breath for a moment and finally said, okay. If you can go up, I'll go with you. Tuanzi wagged its tail happily and turned around, intending to go to the 7th floor. Chu Luiyue looked down and saw that there seemed to be no end to the spiral staircase. Suddenly, her gaze froze and she looked at her feet. There was actually a drop of dried blood there. As it was dark red and fell at the edge, she didn't see it when she came up from below. This was the 6th level. Who would be able to come here and leave behind a trail of blood? She bent down and took a closer look, frowning slightly. According to her experience, this drop of blood seemed to have been left not long ago. It was very likely that it was left in the past 2 days. Who could it be? Chu Luiyue stretched out her hand, wiped the blood gently and looked at it carefully. A familiar aura hit her in the face. She was stunned. This seemed to be, she immediately looked around the drop of blood again. After searching carefully, she finally saw a green feather in an inconspicuous corner. She immediately recognized that it was Hong Yao's feather with just one look. Hong Yao has been here? Chu Luiyue was shocked, and then she suddenly remembered that when she saw Hong Yao previously, there was blood under its wings. It seemed to be injured. At that time, she was immersed in the shock that Hong Yao actually recognized her, so she didn't pay attention to it. Now that she thought about it, it was indeed strange. As a 7th grade fiend, Hong Yao was very powerful. Being able to injure it showed that the other party wasn't easy to deal with. More importantly, there shouldn't be such an existence in country Yao Chen. From the looks of it, Hong Yao had barged into Jiuyou Tower and was injured here. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but think of that ferocious magical beast. Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't follow her, Dumpling chased after her. When it saw the green feather in Chu Luiyue's hand, a look of disdain flashed across its eyes. As expected, he was useless. He was actually injured here. Chu Luiyue glanced at it. Dumpling, Hong Yao is injured here. Are you sure you want to continue? Even Hong Yao had suffered a loss, so she and Dumpling might not be a match for him. Hearing this, Dumpling's face immediately scrunched up. How could that green sparrow compare to it? Chu Luiyue saw that it was very stubborn, so she couldn't help but sigh. If you run into trouble later, I can't help you. It might even become a burden to her. Dumpling stepped forward angrily and threw away the green feather. Then it hugged Chu Luiyue's hand and walked up. She had made up her mind. Chu Luiyue had no choice but to secretly take out the crystal barrier, ready to deal with any sudden situations. The human and beast continued to walk toward the 7th floor. Chu Luiyue already felt as if something heavy was pressing down on her body, and every step she took was extremely heavy. If not for Dumpling, she probably wouldn't have been able to continue. Finally, the two of them reached the barrier on the 7th floor. Unlike the transparent barriers from before, the one in front of him was actually a bright silver. The brilliance flowed, and it looked as brilliant as the galaxy. However, Chu Luiyue was not in the mood to admire it at this moment. She stood stiffly in front of the barrier, and the blood in her body seemed to have solidified. Only her heart was beating wildly. She took a deep breath, and then slowly stretched out her hand and reached forward. Dumpling sat on the back of her hand, and its round eyes were wide open, looking excitedly and expectantly at the flickering silver barrier in front of it. Chu Luiyue could clearly see her fingers slowly sinking into the silver barrier. The silver barrier was solid, and Chu Luiyue could even clearly feel the strong resistance. This time, it was as if she had plunged into a quagmire. Soon, Chu Luiyue felt as if there was a force crazily dragging her, trying to pull her in. Her heart trembled, and she subconsciously tried to pull her hand out. However, the force also grew rapidly, and it swallowed even more of her hand. Very quickly, the flowing light had already pulled her entire hand into it. Dumpling's body was halfway in. At this moment, a ball of black karmic fire suddenly rushed out of the barrier. A burning pain suddenly assaulted him. Chu Luiyue immediately wanted to retreat. But at this moment she was already trapped within the silver barrier. She could not move. In an instant, the black karmic fire had spread to Chu Luiyue's body, and surrounded her. Chu Luiyue immediately threw out the crystal barrier. However, she soon realized that the crystal barrier did not have any effect. Because one of her hands had sunk into the silver barrier, the crystal barrier could not pass through the barrier, and could not completely protect her. Helpless, she could only put away the crystal barrier, and began to think of other ways. The blazing flames made her feel as if her entire body was burning. She could even smell something burning. However, at this moment, Dumpling's body had been completely swallowed by the flowing light. Chu Luiyue realized that her hand, which had been swallowed by the barrier, was completely numb and had lost all feeling. Therefore at this moment she had lost all sense of Dumpling. Dumpling? Chu Luiyue raised her voice and shouted. However, Dumpling did not respond. At this moment, the black karmic fire had completely spread over the entire barrier. Chu Luiyue stood there as if she was in hell. Just as she was feeling extremely anxious, she suddenly heard a clear sound. Kacha. Her heart jumped, and she immediately focused her gaze. She saw that the black karmic fire in front of her had suddenly encountered something terrifying, and was rapidly retreating from the center. A crack had appeared on the barrier that was flickering with light. Chu Luiyue's brows furrowed, and in the next moment she saw that the crack had expanded again. Crash! The barrier shattered. A small claw suddenly reached out from within. It was Dumpling. Chu Luiyue's heart relaxed. Then she saw Dumpling grab the edge of the shattered barrier and forcefully break it. Kacha. A bright and colorful barrier was actually broken like a piece of broken ice by it. Chu Luiyue suddenly had a premonition. Indeed, in the next moment she heard the crisp sound of something being bitten. Kacha. Kacha kacha. Gulp. Through the hole in the middle, Chu Luiyue could clearly see Dumpling stuffing the last bit of the barrier into her mouth, chewing and swallowing. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 289. This scene was all too familiar. However, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat uncontrollably when she saw it. How could Dumpling eat this? Previously, when it ate Heng Jingshua's force, she thought it was already shocking enough. She did not expect it to be able to eat a barrier that was full of pressure so easily. This was not an osmanthus cake. Because she was too shocked, Chu Luiyue could not say a word for a while. She could only watch in a daze as Dumpling broke off another piece and put it into its mouth. Chu Luiyue even saw that there was still a black karmic fire on the barrier that had yet to burn. However, Dumpling did not seem to care at all. Because it was careless, a strand of its beard was burned off. Fortunately, it changed its angle in time and successfully put the thing into its mouth and ate it happily. The black karmic fire around it was still burning wildly, but Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that this thing did not seem to be so powerful. No matter how strong it was, wasn't it still eaten by Dumpling? Looking at Dumpling diligently breaking off another piece, the corner of her eyes twitched. If other people saw this scene, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Dumpling, is it delicious? In the end, she could not help but ask. Dumpling heard her and stopped. It looked at her with bright eyes and nodded furiously. Delicious. Super delicious. It was much better than Heng Jingchua's Moon Devourer. Compared to this, what it ate before was rubbish. Chu Liwei was shocked by its enthusiastic reaction, and the corner of her eyes twitched uncontrollably. So what exactly did she bring back? After the previous few incidents, Chu Liwei had already guessed that Dumpling was not an ordinary blood ferret. It was even different from other magical beasts. She had never heard of any magical beast that consumed origin power as food. She did not notice it before, but later she realized that Dumpling did not seem to like to eat. What it loved the most was origin power, and it was the kind that came in large clumps. Just like this silver barrier. This thing was also condensed from origin power and contained an extremely powerful suppressive might. Chu Liwei had no doubt that this barrier could indeed stop cultivators below rank 7. Therefore, Dumpling's behavior now looked even more strange. As Dumpling ate crazily, the hole in the barrier grew bigger and bigger. The black karmic fire that was spreading wantonly seemed to have sensed that something was wrong and retreated. However, Dumpling was even faster. She devoured the flaming barrier piece by piece. Chu Liwei watched quietly, the waves in his heart unable to calm down for a long time. That originally extremely tall silver barrier was quickly reduced to rubble. In the end, it was completely destroyed by Dumpling. As for the hand that had been swallowed, it had been freed at some point. After finishing the last bite, Dumpling finally rubbed her round belly and burped in satisfaction. Burp? Chu Liwei was speechless. If Heng Jingchua could see this scene, he should be able to rest in peace. In this world, how many people's origin power could receive the same treatment as this powerful barrier? From the looks of it, Dumpling was willing to swallow that ball of origin power because she was compromising. Chu Liwei looked at the broken barrier in front of him and did not recover for a long time. After a while, he looked at Dumpling faintly. Dumpling, tell me honestly. Did you come here just to eat this? Dumpling suddenly sneezed. Achoo. Chu Liwei was speechless. She seemed to be guilty? Chu Liwei held his forehead helplessly. The 7th level's barrier was eaten by Dumpling just like that. This matter would definitely attract the attention of the elders in the academy. It might not even take long for them to rush over. Of course, whether or not they could reach this level was another matter. But if others found out, she felt that she really could not explain it. Did she have to tell everyone that she was brought up by Dumpling and that it was also the one who ate this barrier? Dumpling saw that Chu Liwei seemed to be very troubled, so it quickly flew over and threw itself into her arms, rubbing against her ingratiatingly. Chu Liwei's neck tickled and she could not help but laugh. She pulled Dumpling down, annoyed and amused. Don't act cute. Tell me, what should we do now? How was she going to explain such a big hole? Dumpling blinked and thought for a long time. Then it stretched out its paw and pointed upwards. Chu Liwei's eyebrows twitched violently, and an even more ominous premonition attacked her heart. You still want to go up? Dumpling heard a hint of threat in her voice and nodded timidly. How far were they? If they did not go up, wouldn't they have made this trip in vain? Chu Liwei's hands trembled slightly, and she kept chanting in her heart. This is my fiend. If I kill it, it will be gone. This is my fiend. If I kill it, it will be gone. This is my fiend. But I don't want to die. Chu Liwei finally could not hold it in anymore and pinched its chubby cheeks harshly. Dumpling, do you know that your master only has one life? If it's gone just like that, it will really be gone. Tuanzi blinked its eyes and then clasped its paws together. It bowed obediently with its hands folded in front, looking eager to please. Chu Liwei closed her eyes. Go. When the 7th level's barrier was eaten by Tuanzi, Elder Wei Yun, who was dozing off in his chair outside Jiuyo Tower, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked up at Jiuyo Tower in shock. This commotion was not right. He had been guarding Jiuyo Tower for many years, but he had never felt such a commotion. For the past half a year, Jiuyo Tower had some strange movements from time to time, but it had always been within their control. Thus, even the dean did not take it to heart. But now, boom. The door of Jiuyo Tower suddenly opened. Several figures were thrown out one after another by a powerful force. They were the students who were cultivating in Jiuyo Tower. Cries of surprise were incessant. Clearly, these people had not realized what had happened. Some of them could not withstand the impact of this force and even vomited blood. They were extremely pathetic. Elder Wei Yun's heart was in his mouth. For so many years, such a situation had never happened in Jiuyo Tower. He abruptly stood up and slapped the black jade stone in front of him without any hesitation. A bright light pillar shot up to the sky. Jiuyo Tower has changed. Other than teachers and elders, all students retreat. Elder Wei Yun shouted sternly. His voice spread far and wide. When the students who were chased out of Jiyo Tower heard this, they were all shocked and hurriedly retreated. At the same time, everyone else in the college also saw the light pillar. Level 1 alert. What happened in Jiyo Tower? Digression. I'm going out tonight. I don't know when the 5th watch will be updated. Everyone don't wait. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. He remembered that when she came in the afternoon, he even congratulated her. Thinking back, Chu Luiyue wasn't among the students who came out just now. She was still inside. How did this happen? Jiyo Tower changed and all the students were expelled. Why is Chu Luiyue the only one left? Elder Wei Yin also became nervous. Chu Luiyue had taken first place twice in the Qingjiao competition just now. She was undoubtedly the top genius in their academy. If anything happened to her, they wouldn't be able to bear the loss. Rong Xiu looked up at Jiyo Tower. I'll go in and bring her out. Elder Wei Yun gritted his teeth and immediately rushed in. But at this moment, Jiyo Tower's door slammed shut with a bang. It blocked Elder Wei Yun outside. Elder Wei Yun widened his eyes. Isn't Chu Luiyue completely trapped in Jiyo Tower? He tried to open the door but it didn't budge at all. Elder Wei Yun then realized that the situation was more serious than he had imagined. What's going on? Just as he was feeling extremely anxious, Sun Zhongyan and the rest finally arrived. Elder Wei Yun quickly explained the situation to them. There were no signs when Jiyo Tower changed. I don't know what's going on. The door can't be opened now. Sun Zhongyan frowned and asked, is there anyone inside? Elder Wei Yun swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Chu Luiyue is still inside. What? Sun Zhongyan was shocked and immediately looked at Jiyo Tower with a frown. Then he crossed his arms in front of him. Rays of light intertwined, and a Xian formation quickly appeared. At the same time, spots of starlight appeared around Jiyo Tower. That was the Xian formation set up on Jiyo Tower. Sun Zhongyan looked at the Xian formation in front of him carefully. That's not right. There's no trace of her in Jiyo Tower. This Xian formation was connected to Jiyo Tower. Even if they couldn't enter, they could see something from the Xian formation. Sun Zhongyan looked at it for a while, but he couldn't sense Chu Luiyue's presence. Elder Wei Yun was puzzled. Impossible. She went in the afternoon and all the other students came out together. She was the only one who didn't come out. She should still be inside. Sun Zhongyan held his breath and checked the Xian formation again. He still shook his head. Still nothing. Everyone looked at each other and fell silent. This situation was too strange. Elder Wei Yun anxiously paced around in circles. Why can't we find her? She's clearly inside. Rong Xiu suddenly said. Elder Sun, which level can your Xian formation see? Sun Zhongyan was stunned and instinctively replied. 5 levels. This Xian formation has been with Jiyo Tower for many years, and it has always been able to see 5 levels. You mean? A ridiculous thought flashed across Sun Zhongyan's mind. Could it be that Chu Luiyue isn't on the 5 levels below? That's impossible. Sun Zhongyan blurted out. No one in Tianlu Academy has ever been able to go above the 5th level. How could she? Halfway through his words, his voice abruptly stopped. Other than this explanation, he couldn't find any other answers. Also, Jiyo Tower's sudden change seemed very wrong. Everyone fell into dead silence. Suddenly, a scream came from the crowd. That door. Everyone looked over and they were all shocked. They saw that the engraved lines on Jiyo Tower's door suddenly jumped. In the blink of an eye, it turned into black karmic fire. It burned fiercely. How could this be? Sun Zhongyan opened his eyes wide and muttered in disbelief. While everyone was still in shock, the fire had already spread rapidly. In an instant, the entire first level of Jiyo Tower was surrounded by the black karmic fire. An extremely ferocious roar suddenly sounded from Jiyo Tower. It reverberated through the heavens. Digression, I rushed it out with all my might. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 291. Everyone was horrified. What is that? Why were there cries of fiends coming from Jiyo Tower? Only Sun Zhongyan was frowning, and his wrinkled face was scrunched up. All Shen masters, listen up. Activate the locking heaven formation. Everyone else, evacuate immediately. Once those words were spoken, everyone looked at Sun Zhongyan in shock. The locking heaven formation was the sealing formation of Jiyo Tower, and it had never been activated for thousands of years. Now, no one knew what would happen after the locking heaven formation was activated. Elder son, can't the locking heaven formation only be activated by the president? Bai Qin asked hurriedly. Sun Zhongyan's face was solemn. I've already informed Uncle Master. I hope he can come out of seclusion as soon as possible. But Jiuyo Tower has changed and the situation is critical. We can't delay. We have to activate the locking heaven formation immediately. Uncle Master has already entrusted the locking heaven formation to me, so I can activate it too. As he spoke, he flipped his wrist and a silver needle appeared in his palm. At first glance, the silver needle looked no different from an ordinary silver needle. But if one looked closer, they would see exquisite patterns engraved on it. In fact, the patterns on it were exactly the same as the patterns on Jiuyo Tower's door. Hearing Sun Zhongyan's words, everyone knew that this was the only way now. No one knew when the president would come, but Jiuyo Tower's situation couldn't wait any longer. Seeing the silver needle in Sun Zhongyan's hand, everyone felt more at ease. Elder son, please give us your orders. Sun Zhongyan rose into the air. He threw the silver needle in his hand. The silver needle grew in the wind and rapidly expanded to the size of a person's arm. From afar it looked like a silver pestle. Then the silver pestle landed right above Jiuyo Tower. It spun rapidly. Locking heaven formation, activate. Sun Zhongyan shouted and countless silver lights flew out of his hand. They all poured into the silver pestle. The next moment, a buzzing sound was heard. The patterns on the silver pestle suddenly lit up. Swoosh! A silver dot of light flew out and landed in a certain location. Sun Zhongyan said, Bai Qin. She sang. Without saying a word, Bai Qin immediately flew over and stood on top of the star. Swoosh! A second silver light quickly appeared and flew to the other side. Wen Yin, Manchi, Qinshao, Donglu, Qigao, Beisi. Sun Zhongyan quickly gave the order, and all the Xian masters moved out. A huge Xian formation quickly appeared in the sky above Jiuyo Tower. Countless silver lines flew out from the silver pestle and intertwined with each other. Starlight flickered on them and spread out like stars on a chessboard. All the mystic cultivators also spread out and prepared to attack. The heaven ceiling formation was a level 6 Xian formation, and no Xian master in the academy could activate it alone. Therefore they could only work together. When everyone was in position, Sun Zhongyan shouted in a deep voice. Activate. As soon as he said that, all the Xian cultivators moved at the same time and poured their origin power into the starlight beneath their feet. Streams of light flew out and flowed along the huge interweaving lines in the air. They were all gathered in the silver pestle. A vast pressure descended. Above Jiuyo Tower, the locking sky formation was activated. Below Jiuyo Tower, the other teachers had already begun to evacuate. At a time like this, the only thing they could do was to ensure the safety of everyone in the academy. Rongxiu. Let's go. Elder Wei Yun saw that Rongxiu was still standing at the same spot and thought that he hadn't reacted yet, so he hurriedly advised him. It's very dangerous here. You can't stay here. Given Jiuyo Tower's current situation, no one could say for sure what would happen. The heaven ceiling formation had already been activated, and the pressure was extremely strong. When the two forces collided, the people standing at the side would bear the brunt of it. Rongxiu didn't have much cultivation and his body was weak. How could he withstand such a crushing force? If anything happened to Rongxiu, they wouldn't be able to explain it to His Majesty. However, Rongxiu didn't seem to hear anything and only looked up at the 7th level of Jiuyo Tower. Rongxiu. Elder Wei Yun shouted again, but Rongxiu still didn't respond. He couldn't help but become more anxious. When he turned back, the black karmic fire had already completely surrounded the 1st level of Jiuyo Tower, and the door was completely sealed. What was even more worrying was that it didn't have any intention of stopping and was spreading toward the 2nd level. The scorching flames had already started to ignite the surroundings. The air was so hot that it could almost burn people. Elder Wei Yun was burning with anxiety. He had to control this fire as soon as possible. Otherwise, once it spread, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yanqing. Take him away quickly. Elder Wei Yun had no choice but to shout at Yanqing. Yanqing looked up, glanced at Elder Wei Yun and shook his head firmly. Elder Wei Yun, please forgive me. Yanqing has always been obedient to His Highness. Since His Highness wanted to stay here, he naturally had to follow. Even if he knew that it was very dangerous, he had no other choice. Because that person was in even more danger now. If anything happened to Chu Luiyue, Yanqing didn't dare to imagine what his master would do. Elder Wei Yun couldn't help but curse in his heart when he saw that the master and servant didn't listen to him at all. These two fools. Everyone else had already left. Were they really going to stay here and wait for death? Boom. A ball of black karmic fire suddenly rose. It actually shot straight up to the 3rd level. Elder Wei Yun wasn't paying attention and was hit by the blast. He lost his balance and took a few steps back. Screech. The fiend's screech sounded again. Everyone's mind was shaken. The entire school seemed to be enveloped in this fierce and shrill screech. Elder Wei Yun's blood was in turmoil, and he almost spat out blood. He looked up at Jianghu Tower in shock. What kind of fiend was suppressed in there? It was actually so powerful. It was just a screech, but it actually had such a frightening aura. At the same time, even the students and teachers who had retreated far away were somewhat affected. They widened their eyes in shock as they looked at Jianghu Tower. Their hearts were in turmoil. Gosh, Jianghu Tower is actually burning? What exactly is going on? Old Sun and the rest actually activated the locking heaven formation? This is the first time in 1,000 years, right? Weren't the few of you still cultivating in Jianghu Tower previously? Do you know what exactly is going on? How would we know? Everything was fine before. Suddenly, there was a huge force that chased us out. We didn't even have time to react. Luckily, you all came out. If you were still inside, I'm afraid. Wait. I just heard from Elder Wei Yun that Chu Luiyue seems to still be inside. What? Then isn't she? Everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Chu Luiyue is most likely doomed this time. On the other side, Elder Wei Yun finally caught his breath. Suddenly, he saw a tall figure striding toward Jianghu Tower. He was shocked. Rongxiu. Stop right there. However, Rongxiu didn't stop and continued forward without hesitation. In an instant, the black karmic fire enveloped him and swallowed him. Digression. I'm staying at my friend's house. She's still sleeping and I'm sitting on the bay window quietly typing. I think it's better to read it at night. Updates will drop from time to time. I'm in debt again and again. Too much debt is no burden. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 292. Rongxiu is really crazy. This thought flashed across Elder Wei Yun's mind. Jianghu Tower is so dangerous now. Not only did Rongxiu not leave, but he even barged in. Isn't he courting death? He gritted his teeth and rushed forward, wanting to bring Rongxiu out. But a ball of black karmic fire suddenly exploded in front of him. It blocked Elder Wei Yun outside. He hurriedly turned around and saw that Yanqing didn't follow Rongxiu in. He was about to call out to Yanqing when Yanqing suddenly turned around and left. She disappeared in the blink of an eye. Elder Wei Yun couldn't care less now. He had no choice but to fly into the air and say to Sun Zhongyan, Rongxiu has gone into Jianghu Tower. Sun Zhongyan frowned. I know. This locking heaven formation was specially used to suppress Jianghu Tower. After it was activated, he knew everything that happened in Jianghu Tower. But unfortunately, he could only see the bottom 5 levels. So, he still couldn't find Chu Luiyue's traces. I tried to stop him just now, but I couldn't. Sun Zhongyan looked at the black karmic fire that was burning wildly below and said solemnly. Elder Wei Yun was shocked. How could this be? Sun Zhongyan held the silver pestle and controlled the entire locking heaven formation. If he really tried to stop him, how could Rongxiu still enter? How could Sun Zhongyan not know what he was thinking? In fact, he was also very shocked and confused. When he sensed Rongxiu's aura, he knew that something was wrong and immediately sent out a force to stop him. But it didn't seem to have any effect on Rongxiu. Suddenly, Sun Zhongyan was shocked. Rongxiu has already entered the 1st level. Elder Wei Yun's mouth was wide open. He was so shocked that he stuttered. What? Why isn't the door closed? How did he go in? He saw with his own eyes that Jianghu Tower's door closed by itself. At that time, even he was excluded. Rongxiu did not have the slightest bit of cultivation, so how did he open the door? Moreover, the entire 1st floor was burning. I don't know, but he did go in. And it's still going up. Sun Zhongyan looked at the flickering dots of light on the profound formation in front of him, and his heart also tightened. Now, they couldn't afford to lose the 2 people in Jianghu Tower. Moreover, even if it was out of selfishness, he absolutely did not wish to see anything happen to the 2 of them. Rongxiu probably has a protective yuan instrument on him. That's why he was able to enter safely, but that shouldn't last for too long. Elder Wei Yun thought for a while and felt that this was the only plausible explanation. But no matter what, we still have to find a way to bring them out. Sun Zhongyan suddenly sucked in a cold breath. When Elder Wei Yun saw the change in his expression, his heart sank. He actually went up to the second level? Sun Zhongyan said in shock. How is this possible? His body is weak and he can't cultivate. It's already a coincidence that he could enter the first level. How can he go up to the second level? He's not a stage 2 warrior. Lu Yu is a stage 2 warrior, but there's no trace of him on the second level. Sun Zhongyan gritted his teeth and said. Elder Wei Yun was instantly speechless. After a while, he asked hesitantly, so you're saying that he's indeed above the 5th level? Sun Zhongyan closed his eyes. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. Jianghu Tower had a strict hierarchy, and every level was blocked by a barrier. No one had ever been able to go up. But now, the truth was right in front of his eyes, and he had no choice but to believe it. Boom. Just as the two of them were talking, the flames below Jianghu Tower burned even more vigorously. Sun Zhongyan mobilized all the force in his body and poured it into the silver pestle. The gigantic profound formation in the sky became even more vibrant. It was oppressive. The two forces entered a frenzied confrontation. The commotion caused by Jianghu Tower quickly attracted the attention of many powerful figures in the imperial city. Mu Qinghe, who was resting in her room, suddenly opened her eyes and looked in the direction of Jianghu Tower. He stared at it for a while and muttered softly, "Looks like a beast is about to emerge. Looks like a ferocious beast is about to be born. I didn't think there would be such an existence here." Country Yaoqin really had a lot of secrets. At that moment Hong Yao suddenly flew over. Its ruby-like eyes stared intently at Jianghu Tower. Mu Qinghe looked down at it. Hong Yao had been unhappy since it came back yesterday. It refused to say anything when she asked it. It only stubbornly buried its head under its wings and remained motionless. Mu Qinghe knew that it was throwing a tantrum, but she didn't intend to coax it. Hong Yao's temper was getting worse. In the past it would complain to that person every time, and he had no choice but to give in several times. But it was different now. That person was long gone. If Hong Yao continued acting like this, it would cause big trouble sooner or later. Therefore Mu Qinghe had already made up her mind to treat Hong Yao's temper. Since Hong Yao didn't move, he didn't do anything and allowed it to sulk by itself. Seeing that Hong Yao was on high alert and its eyes were burning with anger, he suddenly understood and frowned. "Where did you go previously?" Hong Yao ignored him. It flapped its wings and was about to fly away. Mu Qinghe crossed her arms and said lightly, "Your cultivation seems to be deteriorating. It seems that your cultivation is indeed declining with each passing day. Now even a suppressed ferocious beast is able to injure you." Hong Yao turned its head angrily and glared at him. He didn't know what was going on and was just spouting nonsense. That beast was indeed suppressed under Jianghu Tower, but it didn't mean that it was weak. Furthermore, it wasn't prepared at all and was injured by that beast. If it was serious, it would definitely be able to beat that beast to a pulp. Mu Qinghe narrowed her eyes when she saw Hong Yao's reaction. Hong Yao had always been proud and arrogant. It wouldn't even take a second look at ordinary fiends. For it to have such a huge reaction, it was enough to prove that the suppressed ferocious beast's level wasn't low. He had a thought and his figure disappeared from the spot instantly. Hong Yao widened its eyes. Again. He didn't want it to go, but wasn't he going now? Green flames burned on Hong Yao's body, and it quickly rushed toward Jianghu Tower. "I must take this opportunity to take revenge." On the other side, Fu Yunshan, Qinghan, and the rest also felt that something was amiss. When they realized that the commotion was coming from Tianlu Academy, they were all shocked and rushed over. They weren't worried that the people of Tianlu Academy would encounter any danger, but they were shocked by the terrifying commotion. When they reached the outside of the academy, they saw Jianghu Tower burning crazily from afar. The black flames had already surrounded the lower levels of Jianghu Tower, making it look like purgatory. Above Jianghu Tower, Sun Zhongyan and the rest were working together to suppress it. However, that huge Shen formation was on the verge of collapsing. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 293. A roar was heard again. Dark clouds gathered in the sky. Thunder rumbled. The appearance of rare treasures or high-level magical beasts would trigger a phenomenon in the heavens and earth. "There's a fiend trapped under Jianghu Tower?" Fu Yunshan exclaimed in shock. Qinghan's face darkened. "Rumor has it that there's a pit of heavenly origins under Jianghu Tower. If there's a fiend hidden there, it's most likely a ferocious beast." However, he had never heard of such a thing before. That ferocious beast seems extraordinary. Not only did it cause such a huge commotion, but it also seems like it's going to break free from Jiuyou Tower. Sun Zhongyin's Xian formation won't last long. Xuanhuan muttered to himself, and many emotions flashed across his eyes. Fu Yunshan hurriedly said, "Then we have to hurry and help. If that ferocious beast comes out, I'm afraid." "What are you afraid of?" Xuanhuan suddenly interrupted him and raised his brows with a strange expression. "This is Jiuyou Tower. Even if something really happens, it's Tianlu Academy's business. Is it up to outsiders like us to interfere? That Xian formation is obviously Jiuyou Tower's seal, which means that they already knew that there was a ferocious beast hiding under Jiuyou Tower and made ample preparations. What's the point of us doing anything now? We might even get into trouble in the end." Fu Yunshan glanced at him. "You mean? I don't mean anything. Brother Yunshan, if you want to help, just go ahead. I don't want to get involved in this mess." With that, Xuanhuan took a step back. "Brother Yunshan, please." Fu Yunshan was instantly embarrassed. Actually, he had just said it casually, but after seeing Xuanhuan's attitude, he could not help but feel a little nervous. Nobody knew what was down there, and it was indeed very dangerous to go there now. He did not intend to sacrifice his life for Tianlu Academy. Xuanhuan's words were not without reason. In the end, this was Tianlu Academy's business, and it had nothing to do with them. It was better to observe the situation first. Then let's take a look first. That Xian formation has already been set up. If we go there rashly, I'm afraid we'll bring trouble to them. Fu Yunshan coughed and decided to watch from the sidelines. Xuanhuan sneered in his heart. Just now he had heard people from Tianlu Academy discussing that Chu Luiyue was still trapped in Jiuyou Tower. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. If they could take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Chu Luiyue, it would save them a lot of effort. He looked at the black karmic fire that was still spreading, and an undetectable cold smile flashed across his eyes. It was such a pity that such a genius was going to fall just like that. Sun Zhongyin and the rest quickly realized that even though they had successfully activated the locking heaven formation, they were not strong enough to suppress Jiuyou Tower. Not only did the flames not have the slightest intention of extinguishing, they became even more rampant. As the two forces clashed, the heaven-sealing array gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. If this continued, the heaven-sealing array would break sooner or later. At that time, the situation would be completely out of control. It was at this moment that Sun Zhongyin sensed another wave of fluctuation coming from the profound formation. Rongxiu had actually reached the third floor. He opened his mouth, but he was so shocked that he didn't know what to say. He didn't know what was going on with Rongxiu, such as whether he was injured or not, but he was sure that Rongxiu had passed through the barriers of the second and third floors consecutively. How exactly did he do it? Elder Wei Yun saw that Sun Zhongyin's expression wasn't right, and he vaguely guessed something in his heart. Rongxiu is still going up? Sun Zhongyin nodded with difficulty. With Chu Luiyue in front of him, the things that Rongxiu had done didn't seem so shocking anymore. However, why did Rongxiu go in? This was what Elder Wei Yun couldn't figure out the most. It was impossible that he didn't know how dangerous it was inside. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind. Could it be, it can't be for Chu Luiyue, right? When Sun Zhongyin heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. Otherwise, what else could it be? I didn't even notice it before. Previously, he thought that the two of them only knew each other, but it seemed like it wasn't just that. Gotcha. A crisp shattering sound was suddenly heard. Sun Zhongyin looked over, and his pupils suddenly constricted. He saw that a crack had suddenly appeared in the middle of Jiuyou Tower. Jiuyou Tower had actually cracked. A cluster of black karmic fire crazily surged out from within. As a result, half of Jiuyou Tower was engulfed in flames. Sun Zhongyin's face was a little pale. Jiuyou Tower had existed for thousands of years and had weathered countless storms, but it had never been damaged in the slightest. But now, roar. Suddenly, accompanied by a ferocious roar, a cluster of black flames rose abruptly. That flame rapidly transformed into a huge eagle in midair and rushed towards the locking heaven formation above Jiuyou Tower. It's the illusion of that ferocious beast. Elder Wei Yun exclaimed in shock. The appearance of that eagle was exactly the same as the carving on the door of Jiuyou Tower. He had guarded Jiuyou Tower for many years and was very familiar with everything in Jiuyou Tower. Thus, he immediately recognized that eagle the moment he saw it. He never expected that such a ferocious beast was actually hiding under Jiuyou Tower. Boom. Its speed was extremely fast and everyone could only see a black trace streaking past. The next moment, it had already collided with the Xian formation. Sil. Sun Zhongyan shouted fiercely. The force in his body surged out. The other elders and teachers were also stunned by this scene. When they heard Sun Zhongyan's voice, they finally reacted and increased their force once again. Bam! A huge collision sound was heard. Countless sparks and light scattered in all directions. The silver pestle in the middle seemed to be affected as well, and it shook violently. With this movement, the Xian formation in the sky also started to fluctuate. It looked as if it would break apart at any time. Elder Sun, this side can't hold on any longer. A teacher shouted loudly. Just as he finished speaking, the starlight under his feet suddenly exploded. The terrifying impact backfired and he couldn't dodge at all. He spat out blood and his body flew backward. The spot where he was previously at quickly dimmed. The illusion formed by the black karmic fire seemed to have found this weak spot. It immediately changed its direction and charged in that direction. Quick, stop it! Sun Zhongyan shouted hurriedly. However, it was already too late. This locking heaven formation was extremely huge. All the Xian masters in the academy were here, and they barely managed to activate this Xian formation together. Everyone could only be responsible for a part of it. Now that one person suddenly made a mistake, the others simply couldn't fill in time. In the blink of an eye, that black illusion had already rushed to the dim gap. Its body was wrapped in a terrifying aura, and it was extremely valiant. This time, it could probably completely destroy the locking heaven formation. Digression. I'm going out for lunch in the afternoon, and I'll probably have to wait until nighttime for the remaining 2 updates. Chapter 294. Condense. A low and powerful voice suddenly sounded. At the same time, everyone saw a silver ray of light falling. It covered the broken Xian formation. The moment the two forces came into contact, they immediately merged. The area that was originally dark instantly brightened up. The Xian formation that was previously on the verge of collapsing instantly stabilized with the infusion of this energy. Everyone looked over and saw a gray figure slowly walking over from the void. When Sun Zhongyan saw that person, he immediately exclaimed in surprise. Uncle Master. Who else could it be if not Tianlu Academy's director Yi Zhiding? He was still wearing the gray cotton shirt and holding a fan in his hand. There were no waves of force on him and he looked very simple. He was no different from an ordinary elder. However, everyone present knew that he was the most powerful person here. When the teachers and students in the academy saw Yi Zhiding, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Xuanhuan and Fu Yunshan, who were secretly observing from afar, were shocked. They didn't expect Yi Zhiding to suddenly appear at this time. He came out just in time. Xuanhuan glared at that figure and gritted his teeth. Fu Yunshan could not help but whisper. After so many years, old Yi seems to have become even stronger. Xuanhuan felt increasingly frustrated. Of course he could see this too. He originally thought that he could win against Yi Zhiding once in the Imperial City and redeem himself. He felt rather regretful that Yi Zhiding didn't appear. After knowing that Yi Zhiding had a disciple, he thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea to let Situ Xingqian win against his disciple. However, he didn't expect Yi Zhiding's disciple to be Chu Luiyue. Also, Chu Luiyue took first place in both the warrior and Xian master competitions. What frustrated him the most was that even Situ Xingqian's first place in celestial physician was actually obtained by Chu Luiyue. Later, he regretted it immensely and actually agreed to Chu Luiyue's suggestion to replace Situ Xingqian. He originally had a stomach full of anger, but he didn't expect Jiuyo Tower to change just as he was about to leave the Imperial City. Yi Zhiding also came out. Most importantly, Yi Zhiding's cultivation level was obviously higher than before. Xuanhuan was certain that if the two of them fought now, he still wouldn't be Yi Zhiding's match. Jiuyo Tower is in big trouble this time. I don't think they can resolve it so easily. Xuanhuan said gloomily. Fu Yunshan was very hesitant. On the one hand, he didn't want to get involved in such a dangerous matter. Who knew what kind of existence was suppressed under Jiuyo Tower? On the other hand, he didn't want to offend Yi Zhiding because of this. Just as he was feeling conflicted, Yi Zhiding had already walked slowly to the shattered starlight. He waved the palm leaf fan in his hand, and a layer of starlight fell down. It drew a bright streak of light in the air, and finally landed on the silver pestle in the middle of the heaven ceiling formation. The silver pestle, which had been swaying a little, began to spin rapidly again. Moreover, it once again unleashed a powerful force that spread out in all directions. The huge heaven ceiling formation once again shone brightly. The black figure seemed to sense a threat as it stopped and stared at Yi Zhiding warily. It was very clear that Yi Zhiding's arrival would be a great threat to it. Both parties were in a stalemate. Yi Zhiding looked at it. His eyes, which had always been old and turbid, were now extremely bright and filled with suppression. Evil creature. How dare you? His voice boomed like thunder. Light intersected above the heaven-sealing formation. A hint of struggle flashed across the black figure's scarlet eyes. As the dean of Tianlu Academy, Yi Zhiding was also the true owner of the silver pestle. Now that he was here, the heaven-sealing formation's power was naturally more than twice as strong as before. Go! Yi Zhiding waved the palm leaf fan in his hand again. The huge heaven-sealing formation undulated like waves on the sea. The black figure let out a painful roar. Then its entire body was actually split apart. It transformed into countless black sparks that scattered in all directions. Even the black karmic fire that was burning below seemed to be affected as it retreated a lot and didn't continue moving upwards. When Sun Zhongyan and the rest saw this, their hearts finally settled down. Uncle Master, you're finally out of seclusion, Sun Zhongyan said agitatedly. If he was any later, the heaven-sealing formation would have really been broken by that evil creature. Yi Zhiding laughed out loud. If I still didn't come out, the entire academy would have been destroyed by this evil creature. Sun Zhongyan lowered his head in guilt. It's all because we're useless. You're not to blame for this. This evil creature wanted to come out long ago, but it didn't find a suitable opportunity. I happened to be at the juncture of a breakthrough, so I didn't pay much attention to it. A moment of carelessness led to today's situation. Yi Zhiding shook his head, but he didn't blame Sun Zhongyan and the rest. Sun Zhongyan asked hesitantly. Then, Uncle Master, what do you think we should do now? That evil creature clearly hasn't been completely subdued. Also, Uncle Master, there's already a crack on Jianghu Tower. I'm afraid we can't continue suppressing this evil creature in the future. This is even more troublesome. Yi Zhiding glanced at Jianghu Tower. Indeed, there was a clear crack on the tower. His expression instantly turned serious. In this case, things are much more troublesome than I expected. His gaze landed on the heaven-sealing formation again, wanting to find a way to solve this problem. Suddenly his gaze focused. There's still someone in Jianghu Tower? Sun Zhongyan's heart skipped a beat, and he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Yes. Who's the one on the 4th floor? 7th Prince, Prince Li. Sun Zhongyan didn't dare to hide anything and immediately answered. Yi Zhiding furrowed his brows tightly. How did he go in? Without waiting for Sun Zhongyan's reply, Yi Zhiding discovered something even more shocking. There's still someone on the 5th floor? Sun Zhongyan couldn't be bothered anymore and hurriedly nodded. Yes. Lu Yu is still on the 5th floor. Can you see which floor she's on? Uncle Master is stronger than me, so he can see the situation on the higher floors. Upon hearing the familiar name, the corners of Yi Zhiding's eyes twitched. Who did you say? Sun Zhongyan choked and lowered his voice. Chu Liyue. Yi Zhiding's vision turned black. I only have one precious disciple. Such a thing actually happened. How dangerous is Jianghu Tower now? Won't she be dead if she goes in? How did she go up? Sun Zhongyan was on the brink of tears. I really want to know too. Yi Zhiding was anxious. He hurriedly focused and looked at the heaven-sealing formation again, wanting to check on Chu Liyue's current situation. When he saw it, his expression turned ugly. I can only sense that she's on the upper floors, but I can't sense which floor she's on. Now, I only know that she's not on the 6th floor. That means she's at least on the 7th floor. How can she go to such a hellish place? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 295. Sun Zhongyan was so shocked by this that he couldn't react for a while. This means that Rong Xiu is already on the 4th level, and Chu Liyue is most likely on the 7th level. Uncle Master, what should we do now? Even though Sun Zhongyan had been through a lot, he still panicked in this situation. Yi Zhiding furrowed his brows and was extremely anxious. He kept waving the fan in his hand up and down. This bastard is determined to come out. If we can't completely deal with it, I'm afraid no one will be able to enter Jianghu Tower. Not to mention he wasn't completely confident that he could completely suppress Jianghu Tower when it was broken. Even if he could, how much time would it take? Could Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu, who were inside, safely wait until then? Now that the black karmic fire had been released, half of the tower was probably filled with this fire. The two of them were probably in an extremely dangerous situation. Yi Zhiding suddenly rushed toward Jianghu Tower. However, at this moment, A ball of black karmic fire rose again. Waves of heat surged and blocked Yi outside. Crack. Another crack appeared on Jiuyo Tower. More and more flames surged out. The air around Jiuyo Tower became extremely hot, and even the trees at the side were burning. Yi stared at Jiuyo Tower, and his heart gradually sank. Everyone listen to my orders. Activate the locking heaven formation. Suppress this bastard. An old and deep voice spread far and wide, echoing in the sky above Tianlu Academy. Yes. All the elders and teachers answered in unison. While the outside world was in chaos, there was an eerie silence in Jiuyo Tower. 7th level. Unlike the 6th level, the 7th level was empty. It was a complete and huge space. At this moment, Chu Liwei was standing in this huge space and looking at the scene in front of her. She was shocked and couldn't calm down for a long time. In front of her was a huge, transparent, three-legged cauldron. It was unknown what material this cauldron was made of. It was neither stone nor jade, and it was colorless. There were strange patterns carved on the outside. Perhaps because it was too old, the pattern on it had become somewhat blurry. Chu Liwei looked at it for a long time, but he couldn't recognize the pattern on it. However, this was nothing. What was more important was that there was a ball of black karmic fire burning wildly within the cauldron. The entire space became incomparably hot because of the existence of this flame. And the flames inside were crazily rushing out. If Chu Liwei could go out now, he would know that the black karmic fire that was crazily spreading under Jiuyo Tower came from this cauldron. However, she was certain that this flame was exactly the same as the one engraved on the door of Jiuyo Tower. When she first entered Jiuyo Tower, she was burned by the illusory flames and almost lost her life. From the looks of it was this thing. A ferocious and ruthless aura continuously gushed out from the transparent medicinal cauldron. Chu Liwei took a deep breath. Previously, when Dumpling swallowed the 7th level's barrier, she followed Dumpling up to the 7th level. When she came up, she saw everything in front of her. She never thought that there would be such a strange flame hidden on the 7th level of Jiuyo Tower. According to her understanding of Jiuyo Tower, this thing had probably existed here since the beginning. It was really strange. The Cave of Heavenly Origins was a rare sacred place for cultivation. No one would trap a fiend here, much less leave behind such a strange flame. This thing was sinister and cold. Even though there was still a distance between them, Chu Liwei felt a chill in her heart. It was hard to imagine who had set up so many things in Jiuyo Tower back then. Suddenly, 2 balls of red light appeared in the flame. In the next moment, Chu Liwei suddenly realized that it wasn't red light but a pair of scarlet eyes. She had seen this pair of eyes before. They were the eyes of that eagle. She had felt the threat of this pair of eyes countless times, so she could recognize it at once. However, compared to before, seeing it with her own eyes this time brought her even greater shock. That bone-chilling and terrifying aura enveloped her, making it almost impossible for her to escape. Chu Liwei's blood seemed to have frozen. Only her heart was beating wildly. She walked forward almost uncontrollably. At this moment, Dumpling, who was squatting on her shoulder, suddenly jumped up. Furthermore, it let out a threatening cry of warning. Chu Liwei was shocked. Only then did she come back to her senses and stop in her tracks. Immediately after, she broke out in a cold sweat. She was actually bewitched by that pair of eyes just now. Once she got close, it would be dangerous. She frowned as she looked at the crazily burning flame and asked word by word, "Who are you? Who are you and why do you keep targeting me?" What answered her was a hissing sound. The other party clearly didn't intend to answer her question. Chu Liwei looked at Dumpling. "Dumpling, can you tell what fiend it is?" Dumpling sized it up and shook its head. Chu Liwei's mind raced. She had seen many high-level fiends in her previous life, but the eagle-type ones didn't seem to be similar to this one. For a moment, she couldn't be sure of the other party's true identity. But she could be sure of one thing. This beast really wanted to get out of here. She didn't know if this transparent medicine cauldron was used to seal it or to rear it. Chu Liwei didn't dare to act recklessly. Just as she was deep in thought, a trace of biting cold murderous intent flashed in that pair of scarlet eyes. The next moment, a ball of black karmic fire transformed into a pair of huge wings and flew towards her. Fierce eyes and sharp beak. In the blink of an eye, it rushed in front of Chu Liwei. Fifth floor of Jiuyo Tower. The black karmic fire was quickly spreading upwards from below. From the inside to the outside, it was filled with blazing flames. At a glance it was like purgatory. However, in this sea of fire there was a person walking up slowly. He was dressed in white and his figure was tall and slender. Every step he took was casual and calm. In the endless darkness he was the only white. With every step he took, the flames in front of him would automatically part and open up a path. He walked alone, and the two simple yet extreme colors reflected each other like an eternal painting. Soon he reached the barrier of the 6th floor. He stood at the top of the stairs, and his deep gaze swept across the barrier. Then he reached out his palm and slowly placed it on the barrier. He seemed to be able to feel a trace of residual heat. That was her aura. Rongxiao sighed softly. I thought that she would at most reach the 6th floor, but I didn't expect that. He curled his fingers slightly, and the barrier spread silently. He continued to walk up. Rongxiao has already reached the 6th floor. Yi Zhiding, who had been paying attention to the situation in Jiuyou Tower, suddenly exclaimed. Sun Zhongyan's eyelids twitched harshly. One Chu Luiyue isn't enough. Why is Rongxiao also? How did the two of them do it? He pondered for a while and finally said, Uncle Master, actually this might not be a bad thing. The bottom 5 floors of Jiuyou Tower are already surrounded by the black karmic fire. If we can escape to the top, we might be able to avoid it. Zhongyan, I remember that you've been to the 5th floor before, right? Sun Zhongyan nodded in confusion. Yi Zhiding sighed softly. Then do you think the fire below is more dangerous or the floors above? Sun Zhongyan was speechless. He clearly remembered that the pressure would increase with every level he ascended. Whether it was Chu Luiyue or Rongxiao, they didn't seem to have enough ability to support it. Director. The fire seems to be a little smaller. Not far away, Bai Qin suddenly shouted. The others hurriedly looked over and indeed realized that the fire that had reached the 5th floor didn't continue to go up. Also, compared to before, it did seem to be a little weaker. Yi Zhiding stared at it for a while, but his expression didn't relax at all. Instead, his brows furrowed even more tightly. Sun Zhongyan was about to say, That's great, when he turned and saw Yi Zhiding's expression. His smile suddenly froze. Uncle Master, what's wrong? Something's wrong, Yi Zhiding muttered softly. Sun Zhongyan took another look and asked in confusion, Something's wrong. Something's wrong? What's wrong? Isn't that ferocious beast suppressed by our locking heaven formation? I think the fire seems to be a lot smaller. This should be a sign that they're going to win. Yi Zhiding didn't say anything and only shook his head slowly. Something's wrong indeed. The locking heaven formation didn't suddenly increase its power, and the ferocious beast's transformation was too sudden. Could it be that something happened in Jiuyou Tower? For some reason, he felt a little uneasy as if something was about to happen. Screech. At this moment, a crisp chirp sounded from afar. Everyone looked up and saw a palm-sized green sparrow flying rapidly toward Jiuyou Tower. It was extremely fast and green flames were burning on its body. From afar it looked like a green fireball. That's a 7th grade fiend, a green sparrow? Yi Zhiding was shocked. Sun Zhongyan hurriedly explained. Uncle Master, that's the fiend of the Tianling dynasty's era, Mu Qinghe. Yi Zhiding had been in seclusion previously, so he didn't know what was happening in the outside world. However, he heard the words Tianling dynasty very clearly. He was shocked. When he looked carefully, he indeed saw a young man following behind the green sparrow. He was dressed in ordinary clothes and had a handsome face. However, the scar on his left eye made him look even more stern and oppressive. What surprised Yi Zhiding the most was that he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation level. Hong Yao was furious when it saw the burning black karmic fire. It flapped its wings and flew toward Jiuyou Tower. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Web. Chapter 297. Mu Qinghe frowned when she saw the burning Jiuyou Tower. His heart skipped a beat when he saw Hong Yao rushing inside, but he didn't stop it. In the blink of an eye, Hong Yao had already passed through the black karmic fire, and its small figure disappeared into Jiuyou Tower. Before Sun Zhongyan could stop it, he discovered that the azure sparrow had already disappeared before his eyes. He looked at Yi Zhiding hesitantly. Yi Zhiding was very calm. That's a 7th grade fiend. Nothing will happen to it. At the very least, there's still its master. Sun Zhongyan was then relieved. That's right. I almost forgot that Mu Qinghe is here too. He looked at Mu Qinghe and cupped his hands. Vice Admiral Mu. Why are you here? Mu Qinghe's tone was calm. After such a big commotion, the entire imperial city knows about it. Many people had already arrived outside Tianlu Academy, let alone him. Sun Zhongyan was a little awkward. Mu Qinghe stared at the burning flames on Jiuyo Tower and frowned. I didn't expect such a ferocious beast to be hidden under Jiuyo Tower. He was still a little confused previously as he didn't know what kind of fiend could hurt Hong Yao. But now he understood a little after seeing this scene. Sun Zhongyan did not know how to respond. After hesitating for a moment, he said worriedly, Vice Admiral Mu, this place is very dangerous now. Your fiend just ran in? It would be fine if nothing happened, but if something happened they wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. Mu Qinghe's expression was still cold. It knows what it's doing. Although it's a little dangerous, it's definitely not fatal. It's not impossible to let Hong Yao train for a while. Since Mu Qinghe said that, Sun Zhongyan couldn't persuade her anymore. He returned to Yi Zhiding's side and activated the Locking Heaven formation together. Mu Qinghe's gaze slowly swept across the Locking Heaven formation and finally landed on the silver pestle in the middle. A look of surprise flashed across her eyes. That thing? This small Tianlu Academy seems to be much more complicated than I imagined. Hong Yao easily passed through the black karmic fire without any damage. However, it took some effort to enter the sealed Jiuyo Tower. The door below was locked and the windows on the other floors were all closed. In the end, it finally found the crack in the middle of the tower and flew in against the flames that were constantly gushing out. Chu Luiyue was confronting the beast when he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from above. She looked up and saw a familiar green figure flying towards her. She widened her eyes in shock. Red Demon? Why are you here? After saying that, she suddenly realized that her tone was too familiar, so she immediately looked behind Hong Yao vigilantly. Fortunately, Mu Qinghe did not follow. Red Demon flapped its wings and flew in. At a glance, it saw the transparent medicine cauldron below as well as the black flames that were crazily burning in it. Within it, it felt a familiar threat. It was this fellow who had caused it to be injured. Red Demon widened its eyes and was about to rush up to take revenge. However, at this moment, it suddenly heard Chu Luiyue's voice. It looked up in shock and saw that Chu Luiyue was also here. It was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly turned around and flew toward Chu Luiyue. Before it could fly over, a red shadow flashed and blocked its path. It was Dumpling. Just like before, Dumpling stared at Hong Yao vigilantly, making it clear that she did not want it to get close to Chu Luiyue. Hong Yao was also annoyed and the flames on its body suddenly rose. The two little ones were in a confrontation again. Chu Luiyue looked at them helplessly. He knew that when these two were together, they would always be at odds. How could they fight as soon as they met? Dumpling. Chu Luiyue's tone contained a faint warning. Tuanzi was not convinced, so she snorted and refused to retreat. Hong Yao also did not give in and stared at Dumpling. Chu Luiyue said, If you want to fight, go out and fight now. The two little ones froze at the same time. Chu Luiyue continued, Dumpling, I won't help you. Hong Yao is a 7th grade demonic beast. You may not be its opponent now. Dumpling held its head in annoyance. Hong Yao's eyes flashed with a trace of pride, and it bit its wings. And Hong Yao. Chu Luiyue looked at it again. If you kill my demonic beast, you know the consequences. Hong Yao was stunned. Dumpling was very proud. She turned around and shook her butt at Hong Yao arrogantly. Hong Yao was so angry that it turned around a few times. Finally, it stopped and looked at Chu Luiyue pitifully. Her ruby-like eyes were instantly filled with tears, turning even redder. It was so angry that it cried. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly softened. In fact, she knew that Hong Yao just wanted to come to her side. After all, she used to help Mu Qinghe raise it for so long, and every time it was angry with Mu Qinghe, she always helped it vent its anger. Hong Yao had always been very dependent on her. It was even closer to her than its real master, Mu Qinghe. As a reincarnated human, Hong Yao could recognize her. How could she not be moved? She didn't know how Hong Yao had lived for more than a year. Finally, she sighed softly and waved her hand. Hong Yao. Dumpling suddenly froze and looked up at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. Chu Luiyue glanced at it. Dumpling immediately became obedient. Although it was still angry, it didn't dare to really anger Chu Luiyue. When Red Demon heard the summon, it flew over in surprise and joy. Seeing that it was about to jump into her arms again, Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly and dotingly. However, when it arrived in front of her, Hong Yao suddenly stopped. It looked at Chu Luiyue hesitantly with a timid look in its eyes. Chapter 298. The red demon flapped its wings and 2 balls of blue flames burned instantly. Behind it, an enormous azure phantom suddenly appeared. The suppression of a 7th grade fiend was unparalleled. Chu Luiyue glanced at Hong Yao in shock. She didn't expect it to use a killer move right from the start. However, on second thought, Hong Yao seemed to have been injured by this thing previously. Hong Yao had always been very vengeful. How could it let it go just like that? This time it must find a way to get back at Hong Yao. As if sensing the threat from Hong Yao, the black karmic fire in the transparent cauldron suddenly jumped violently. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. This ferocious beast indeed doesn't give up. It showed weakness previously only because it was at a disadvantage. Suddenly her gaze focused. There seemed to be a stream of light on the transparent cauldron. She felt that something was amiss and took a closer look. However, she didn't see anything this time. Screech. Hong Yao let out a clear cry and flapped its wings. The 2 green flames were flapped out harshly. They went straight for the transparent cauldron. Crack. Another crack appeared on Jiuyou Tower. Even more black flames gushed out from within. Seeing this scene, everyone was extremely nervous and speechless. Yi Zhiding injected force into the silver pestle again. The suppression above the locking heaven formation increased again. However, the power in Jiuyou Tower seemed to have suddenly become violent. What's going on? Didn't the black flame stop for a while just now? Sun Zhongyan was shocked. Yi Zhiding's expression was solemn. As expected. He felt that something was amiss just now, and it seemed like it was indeed so. The black karmic fire wasn't suppressed by the locking heaven formation but by the ferocious beast. Although he didn't know where its power came from, he was certain that if the ferocious beast continued to become stronger, the locking heaven formation would eventually break. Bam! A rock suddenly peeled off Jiuyou Tower. Yi Zhiding's heart suddenly sank. Jiuyou Tower is probably going to collapse. On the other side, Mu Qinghe's gaze focused. She actually saw a familiar green flame in the black karmic fire. Is Hong Yao fighting with that ferocious beast? It seems like the battle is intense. However, the situation of the red demon seemed a bit strange. Although it was proud and stubborn, it was also lazy. That ferocious beast had injured it before, so it would definitely take this opportunity to take revenge. But it seemed that there was no need to use such a killer move right from the start. After Red Demon went in, it seemed to be very excited. He thought for a moment, then suddenly asked Sun Zhongyan, "Is there anyone else in Jiuyou Tower?" Sun Zhongyan was very surprised. How did Vice Admiral Mu know? He had just arrived, so he shouldn't have had the time to hear the discussions of the people below, right? Isn't all of this because of that woman? She's clearly been dead for so many years, but her soul still lingers around. How disgusting. The Empress's fingernails dug deep into her palms, but her expression didn't change as she gently advised from the side. "Your Majesty, don't worry. Prince Li is blessed and he'll be fine. Didn't you say that all the students in the academy have left? Look, they're all over there. Prince Li will definitely be fine." Emperor Jiawen hurriedly looked up and indeed saw all the students gathered together. Jiuyou Tower was burning in the distance, but it was still quite a distance away. Besides, the academy's elders and teachers were around, so there shouldn't be any problems. However, Emperor Jiawen scanned the surroundings and didn't see Rong Xiu. He couldn't help but frown. Why isn't old Seven here? Zhuorong was the first to react. When he heard Emperor Jiawen's question, he didn't know what to say. "Your Majesty, Prince Li." Looking at his hesitant appearance, Emperor Jiawen instantly had an ominous feeling. Where exactly is he? Zhuorong looked down. "Your Majesty, Prince Li is in Jiuyou Tower now." What? Emperor Jiawen felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his body suddenly shook. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 299. The Empress hurriedly held on to Emperor Jiawen and worriedly said, "Don't worry. Your Majesty, you must take care of your health." Emperor Jiawen held the Empress's wrist tightly and finally stabilized himself. He anxiously looked at Jiuyou Tower as he was worried and angry. How could this be? Aren't all the other students here? Why is he in Jiuyou Tower? Zhuorong and the others looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Boom. At that moment, the flames on Jiuyou Tower exploded again. It continued to spread upwards. Emperor Jiawen's heart twitched when he saw this, and he finally couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. His health isn't good to begin with, and you actually allowed him to enter Jiuyou Tower? What kind of intentions are you harboring? If anything happens to him, we will definitely not let you off easily. Emperor Jiawen had always respected Tianlu Academy's elders and teachers, so he had never spoken to them in such a tone. Therefore, when His Majesty shouted, everyone was taken aback. Only then did they realize that His Majesty was very worried about Prince Li. Zhuorong explained helplessly. Your Majesty, please calm down. Actually, His Highness Prince Li went in himself. Emperor Jianghu was dazed, and his face was filled with suspicion. How is that possible? Rong Xiu clearly knew that he was sick. How could he be so stupid as to enter Jiuyou Tower? We dare not deceive your Majesty, so we can only tell you the truth. In fact, all the students had been chased out of Jiuyou Tower before the anomaly. After that, the black karmic fire burned in Jiuyou Tower, but Prince Li entered Jiuyou Tower at that time. He swallowed hard. Elder Wei Yun and the others tried to stop him, but they failed. These two simple sentences contained a huge amount of information. Emperor Jianghu took a while before he recovered his senses. You're saying that he passed through the flames? Because of the shock, his voice was trembling. Zhuorong and the others could only nod. Yes. In fact, how could they not be shocked? Rong Xiu's actions were tantamount to courting death. Later on we also tried to go in, but the fire was too big. There was nothing we could do. Zhuorong lowered his head as he spoke. He himself knew that this explanation sounded very weak, even though it was true. However, they had indeed failed to protect Rong Xiu. If something really happened to Rong Xiu, Emperor Jianghu looked up and dazedly stared at Jiuyou Tower, which was surrounded by black karmic fire. His face turned pale and he didn't say anything for a long time. The Empress stood beside him. Her wrist hurt from his unconsciously pinching. She didn't need to look to know that it was bruised. However, she calmly endured it. What was this bit of pain? Hearing that Rong Xiu was trapped in Jiuyou Tower was enough to offset the pain. Could Rong Xiu survive in such a dangerous place? Originally, he was still worrying about how to get rid of this thorn in his side. Who would have thought that he would send himself to death? Zhuorong had made it clear that it was Rong Xiu who insisted on going in. If he died, he could not blame anyone. At the very least, it had nothing to do with her and her son. The Empress suppressed the joy in her heart and tightly knitted her brows as she comforted him. Your Majesty, don't be anxious. Prince Li always knows his limits and he must have his reasons for doing this. Now that Elder Yi is here, I'm sure Prince Li will be safe. However, Emperor Jianghu couldn't hear a single word. Elder Yi was indeed here, but everyone could tell that the locking heaven formation couldn't last much longer. Besides, even Jiuyou Tower was starting to collapse. Quickly think of a way to save Rong Xiu. Emperor Jianghu muttered as he suddenly saw Mu Qinghe's figure from the corner of his eye. His eyes lit up as if he had seen the last straw. Vice Admiral Mu. Vice Admiral Mu. Upon hearing that, Mu Qinghe looked at Emperor Jianghu. He naturally knew about Emperor Jianghu's actions and knew that Emperor Jianghu wanted to ask him for help. However, he didn't intend to help. Looking at Mu Qinghe's cold and nonchalant expression, Emperor Jianghu felt very uneasy. However, at this juncture he couldn't think of any other solution. Thus he could only beg. Vice Admiral Mu, you're very capable. You can definitely, don't save him. Mu Qinghe straightforwardly interrupted Emperor Jianghu, leaving no room for negotiation. Emperor Jianghu's face turned even paler. Just as he was about to continue fighting, Mu Qinghe spoke again. He's not in any danger now. Why should I save him? Inside Jiuyou Tower. Bang. Hong Yao suffered a blow, and its body flew backward before landing harshly on the floor. The green fire on its body also became much weaker. Hong Yao. Chu Luiyue immediately went forward. Hong Yao struggled to get up, but it still collapsed in the end. On its wing there was a bloody wound. Chu Luiyue carefully carried it up and turned around to take a look. The aura of the illusion formed by the black karmic fire in the transparent cauldron was also much weaker. The two of them fought intensely and actually ended in a draw. Chu Luiyue knew that Hong Yao had previously fought with the other party and was injured. Thus, she didn't dare to underestimate it at all. However, she didn't expect Hong Yao to be on par with the other party when it went all out. If this thing really escaped, she really didn't know how much trouble it would cause. At this moment, Chu Luiyue saw another ray of light flash across the transparent cauldron. This time it was much clearer than before. Chu Luiyue could even tell that the ray of light seemed to follow the strange pattern on the cauldron. She didn't know if it was her imagination. She kept feeling that after the ray of light flashed, the pattern on the cauldron seemed to be clearer than before. Hong Yao lay in Chu Luiyue's arms, but it still stared at the cauldron with indignance. It was already embarrassing enough to lose once previously, but it didn't expect it to lose the second time. If this spread out, its reputation would be ruined. Hong Yao moved and wanted to fight again, but it could only flap its wings weakly. Chu Luiyue said, "You're injured now, so you'd better behave yourself." Hong Yao immediately folded its wings obediently. However, thinking that it was useless after this fight, it couldn't help but bury its head in anger. Chu Luiyue understood. "You want me to help you take revenge?" Hong Yao poked its head out and answered aggrievedly. Dumpling glanced at it contemptuously and sneered. "It's useless." Hong Yao immediately glared at her fiercely. Chu Luiyue patted its head and smiled helplessly. "Okay. Wait by the side." Hong Yao reluctantly left and flew to the side. Before leaving, it didn't forget to raise its head at the black karmic fire, looking arrogant as if it had found a backer. Chu Luiyue held her forehead. Hong Yao didn't seem to realize that she was no longer who she used to be. She really wasn't sure whether she could win or not. Thinking of this, she flipped her palm. With a thought, a cluster of red flames suddenly rose. Almost at the same time. Above the transparent cauldron, endless light suddenly gushed out. The pattern on it quickly became clear. Boom. Digression: I'm going out and won't be back until very late. Therefore there may not be 5 chapters. If there is, it will be very late. Everyone can watch it tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 300. The fire in the cauldron suddenly burned fiercely. Almost in the blink of an eye, the aura was many times stronger than before. Chu Luiyue was taken aback as she took a step back from the terrifying heatwave. Then a pair of red eyes appeared again. All the fire in the surroundings quickly gathered. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Previously, when this ferocious beast took form, it only gathered a portion of the fire. It had never gathered all the fire like this. Boom. A loud sound suddenly came from above. Chu Luiyue looked up and was shocked to see a ball of black karmic fire barging in from outside. It quickly merged with the illusion. Those were the flames that had surged outside previously. At this moment, for some reason, those flames actually all came back. Chu Luiyue felt uneasy. As the fire kept gathering, the illusion became more and more solid. It also gradually had a huge and clear outline. Chu Luiyue stared at it closely. That illusion looked exactly the same as the carving on Jianghu Tower's door. It was a huge black eagle with its wings folded in front of its body. Only a pair of red eyes were filled with endless murderous intent. Made one shudder. Swoosh. Its wings suddenly spread open. A sharp screech reverberated in the entire Jianghu Tower. Look. The fire on Jianghu Tower is dissipating. Just as everyone was extremely nervous and worried that Jianghu Tower would collapse, an exclamation was suddenly heard from the crowd. Everyone looked over in unison. Sun Zhongyan and the rest were pleasantly surprised. "Uncle Master. It seems like the locking heaven formation is working." Yi Zhiding stared closely, and his expression suddenly changed. "Oh no. Retreat." Everyone was confused. The next moment, Yi Zhiding suddenly flew toward the silver pestle in the middle. The fire outside Jianghu Tower started surging in at an even faster speed. Yi Zhiding's hand hit the silver pestle harshly. Rich force surged in crazily. The power of the locking heaven formation increased again. At this point, everyone finally realized that the black fire wasn't extinguished. Instead, it was all surging in. Although they didn't know what was going on, anyone who saw this scene would feel that something was amiss. Bang! The cracks on Jianghu Tower gradually expanded, and the outer layer started to peel off at an even faster speed. Through the broken Jianghu Tower, everyone could only see an endless sea of black fire. The entire Jianghu Tower seemed to have been occupied by the flames. Sun Zhongyan and the others felt their hearts clench tightly. The situation in Jianghu Tower was extremely dangerous. Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue, who were still inside, were most likely dead. Emperor Jiawen quickly walked forward, wanting to find the familiar figure in the fire. The Empress quickly pulled him back. "Your Majesty. Danger." Zhuorong and the others immediately stepped forward to stop him. What a joke. The people inside hadn't come out yet. How could they let more people in? Emperor Jiawen looked dejected, as if he had aged by more than 10 years in an instant. Seeing him like this, the Empress was both jealous and delighted. It would be better if he was dead. Not far away, the students who had gathered together finally couldn't help but whisper to each other. "It's over. Jianghu Tower is really going to collapse this time. I wonder what kind of ferocious beast is being suppressed down there. It's actually so powerful. If the director and the rest can't stop it." "What are you talking about? How can the director and the rest not have a way? Jianghu Tower has existed for thousands of years, and the director and the elders are very strong. They can definitely suppress it again. But if Jianghu Tower collapses, there's a pit of heavenly origins below. I really don't know what will happen after today. Be content. At least we're still alive. However, Prince Li and Chu Liwei inside are probably. At this point, Chu Ning, who had just finished instructing his subordinates, happened to hear this. He instantly looked at the few people who were speaking in shock. Is inside too? I came in a hurry just now and only cared about telling the Imperial Guards to spread out and isolate Tianlu Academy. I didn't notice anything else at all. He immediately looked up and scanned his surroundings. As expected, he didn't see the familiar figure. He forcefully calmed himself down and made himself calm down. Then he took out the compass in his arms. The needle on the compass spun gently and finally pointed to Jianghu Tower. Chu Ning's heart was filled with worry and relief. He was worried that Yu was indeed trapped in Jianghu Tower. Fortunately, since the compass still had a reaction, it proved that Yu was still fine. He put away the compass and immediately rushed toward Jianghu Tower. Lord Chu Ning? What are you trying to do? Zhuorong saw Chu Ning's actions and hurriedly stopped him. Chu Ning stared at Jianghu Tower. Is still inside. Rumble. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and a sudden clap of thunder sounded. A silver lightning suddenly appeared in the rolling clouds. Soon after, the crowd saw that the lightning was rapidly descending and striking straight down. It went straight for Yi Zhiding. Yi Zhiding was forced to retreat quickly. Boom. The bolt of lightning struck the silver pestle with unparalleled precision. In the next moment, the lightning transformed into countless streaks of light that quickly spread down and covered the entire Jianghu Tower. Bam! Above the heaven-sealing array, a star suddenly exploded. An elder suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The area under his feet also quickly dimmed. Then, without waiting for everyone to react, multiple sounds came from the locking heaven formation. Bam bam bam. In the blink of an eye, the massive heaven-sealing formation dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then it completely collapsed. A huge black figure suddenly rushed out of Jianghu Tower. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 301. The Locking Heaven Formation cracked. A few elders and teachers suffered a huge backlash and fell down one after another. Even Yi Zhiding took a few steps back. Jianghu Tower was already enveloped by endless streams of light, dazzling everyone. However, everyone present only felt endless fear when they saw this scene. Now that the Locking Heaven Formation cracked, they wouldn't be able to continue suppressing the ferocious beasts in Jianghu Tower. Uncle Master, what do we do now? Sun Zhongyan asked anxiously. Yi Zhiding swallowed the bloody stench in his throat. Quick! Repair the Locking Heaven Formation. Inside Jianghu Tower, Chu Liwei clearly heard the thunder and saw the bolt of lightning harshly striking down from the top of the pagoda. Countless streams of light appeared on the walls in all directions and surged toward the transparent cauldron in the middle. Gradually, a clear image finally appeared in the middle of the transparent cauldron. Screech! Chu Liwei was shocked. This word. Screech. At this moment, the black phantom in the transparent cauldron suddenly let out a sharp screech. The next moment, it flapped its wings and dived toward Chu Liwei. Dumpling immediately stood in front of Chu Liwei. A huge wing flapped past. A terrifying airwave came and sent Dumpling flying. Chu Liwei immediately hugged Dumpling and waved her hand. A transparent barrier instantly appeared in front of them. Boom! That ball of black fire hit the crystal barrier harshly. But this time, the black karmic fire seemed to be much stronger than before. After a moment of stalemate, a crack actually appeared on the crystal barrier. The huge black eagle's eyes were filled with crazy murderous intent, and its sharp claws slapped down harshly. Crack! The colored glass barrier was completely shattered. Chu Liwei suddenly looked up. The sharp claws were already in front of her. They were about to land and tear her into pieces. She retreated without hesitation and waved her hand at the same time. A ball of red fire suddenly surged out of her palm. Then it condensed into a huge barrier at a visible speed. Boom! 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 The two balls of flames collided fiercely. Sparks flew everywhere. A terrifying shockwave spread out and Chu Liwei was sent flying. With a bang he hit the wall. Her body trembled and she felt as if her internal organs were squeezed together. It was about to explode. At the same time, Rong Xiu, who was also in Jianghu Tower, had already moved from the 6th level to the 7th level. Looking at the damaged 7th barrier in front of him, Rongshio's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding, as if he had already guessed who had done this. The surrounding black karmic fire quickly surged toward the 7th level. However, when they passed by Rongshio, they automatically avoided him. Rongshio lifted his foot and continued to walk up. However, right at that moment, several silver rays of light flowed over and began to repair the damaged barrier at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the barrier was as good as new. Rongshio's eyes gradually turned cold, but the corners of his mouth were dyed with a cold smile. "You want to stop me?" No one responded. Only the black karmic fire covered the barrier. It was obvious that they didn't want Rongshio to go up to the 7th level. A trace of murderous intent flashed across Rongshio's eyes. He raised his hands slightly and his knuckles were distinct. A terrifying aura rapidly gathered around him. However, just as his hand was about to land on the barrier, he suddenly stopped. He closed his eyes as if he was listening to something. Then he opened his eyes and his brows moved slightly. His expression became somewhat playful. Since that's the case, his palm moved slightly and a rich force quickly surged out. Then the force quickly condensed outside the barrier, and finally formed silver light pillars that were as thick as an adult's forearm. From the outside it looked like the door of a cage, completely sealing off the 7th level. His thin, scarlet lips curled up slightly, as if he was waiting to watch a good show. On the 7th level. Chu Luiyue slowly rubbed her shoulder. The collision just now had almost broken her shoulder blade. Fortunately, the barrier formed by the crimson flames was able to block the black karmic fire. As she watched the intense battle between the black and red flames, she thought about how to solve the current predicament. She glanced at the transparent cauldron from the corner of her eye. For some reason she felt that the cauldron seemed to be calling out to her. That feeling was very weak at first, but now it was getting stronger. She couldn't ignore it anymore. This ferocious beast didn't have a physical body, only a soul. For it to be able to survive for 1,000 years, it must have something to do with the pit of heavenly origins under Jianghu Tower. She didn't know who exactly suppressed this ferocious beast here, but she could guess from the carvings on the door of Jianghu Tower that Jianghu Tower was used to seal this ferocious beast. The black karmic fire burned continuously in the transparent cauldron. Then, there was most likely something fishy about the transparent cauldron. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue made up her mind and directly walked toward the cauldron. Sensing Chu Luiyue's actions, the black phantom let out a sneer, as if mocking Chu Luiyue's stupidity. The cauldron was a sacred item, and it wasn't something Chu Luiyue could touch. A stage 2 warrior like her would probably die on the spot before she could even get close. The pair of scarlet eyes stared at Chu Luiyue mockingly. It was just thinking about how to devour Chu Luiyue, and it didn't expect her to send herself to its doorstep. Chu Luiyue walked in front of the cauldron and slammed her palm on the swastika pattern. Digression, Kavinka felt terrible. Let's watch it together tonight. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to this sword dance in the vast sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.